Sylvie.
Welcome to Muay Thai Bones.
Sylvie and Kevin driving across Thailand. Muay Thai Bones, if you're new to the podcast, is this epic podcast on Muay Thai that we do when we're driving across Thailand, usually coming home from a fight that Sylvie had. It is by far the greatest Muay Thai podcast in the world. Why?
Possibly multiple worlds.
In the multiverse, I think. Why? Because nobody in the world does what Sylvie does, or even what we do. She just fought her 259th fight. We try to cover Muay Thai with incredible depth, basically all the ways that Muay Thai touches our lives and hopefully your life too. We want to think deeply about Muay Thai, the technique, the culture, and also Thailand itself, right?
Yes.
That's
all things Muay Thai.
All things. It's crazy what we do. So, if you're new to the podcast, we cover a topic about 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a time. So if you're not into what we're talking about, we'll probably be talking about something very different 20 minutes, 30 minutes down the hop ahead. If you're a patron, all our patrons have access to the audio subscription of the Muay Thai Bones podcast. So you can be watching this in the video form for free on YouTube, but if you'd like to get it on Android or Apple, so you could listen
like an actual podcast.
Like an actual podcast. Like I watch Joe Rogan on YouTube, but you listen to him in podcast form.
Very almost. Different, those two things.
You're like, that's what that guest looked like. So we're going to jump right into it. The first thing we're going to cover is Phuket, right? So we have avoided Phuket and the islands of Muay Thai.
Well, we've just never gone south. Yeah.
It's not that we haven't gone south. We've avoided it, right? Like we've developed a kind of like, I'm not sure I really want to go there. To be honest about it, right?
Yeah, there was a kind of big no thank you.
Like a feeling. No thank you feeling. We had developed in our minds a kind of like, it's going to be super touristed and maybe super artificial, not very Thai. Like I'm speaking for myself, maybe. I had in my mind visions of like Khao San Road. I was telling Emma the other day.
Which is in Bangkok. That's
in Bangkok. A couple of roads in Pattaya, a couple of roads in Chiang Mai, like little, and I'm like, it's going to be like those roads, but like there'll
everywhere.
Be 12 of them or something. And so Sylvie's having a hard time finding fights in our usual network, so we're like, we got to expand. And Sylvie has a card choke fight promotion that just loves her, and they occasionally do one down south, a promotion down south. They do them all over Thailand, and we always say no when they come down here. Originally we said no because we had Jai D, which
was just too far. It's too hard to come.
Well, we also had Jai D, which was very complicated, 13-hour, 14-hour drive, and so we always said no. Jai D passed. It was our dog, our soy dog, and it opened up our ability to move around to new places, stay in new places. So we said yes this time, right? And we put together a trip that also involved filming with crews in Phuket gyms.
Right, because we've never come south, we've never come to the islands, so when the opportunity came and we said yes, it's like you put all the opportunities that you can into that.
Which is basically how we do anything. Like anytime Sylvie goes for a fight, we think to ourselves, is there someone we can film with for the Muay Thai library? If you're new to the library, it is the greatest archive in the multiverse of Thailand technique and the men of Thailand. There's over 80 hours already archived. It's going to be a very important historical collection of I don't know,
technique and personalities,
and commentary and personalities. So I don't know, maybe you're not as into it as I am. I'm very into the resistance I felt about coming to Phuket. Like, I was like, you build up mental images, right?
Well,
and maybe you didn't have the same resistance I did, but I was like, I don't want to go to a string of Glovo gyms.
You'd actually been to islands in the south before we ever met, a very, very long time ago.
Yeah, I went to Koh Phi Phi, Koh Tao, about 15 years ago. I was very disappointed when I went, actually.
Like, I had an incredible resistance to Pattaya the first time that we were going to go there.
Oh, very true.
And I was very surprised by how different it was. Not in what I thought it was going to be, but in the things that I had no anticipation for, but loved.
Yeah, Pattaya has a Thai component that we had lived 2 years in Chiang Mai, Sylvie fighting like a mad woman in Chiang Mai for 2 years. We're up at Lana Gym, and when we came down to Pattaya to get basically better training, more realistic, evolving training, we thought we would never live in Pattaya, but it has this Thainess about it that's actually really charming and beautiful if you just don't go to the 3 or 4 spots where the famed Pattaya is.
It
would be like,
it's like what you were saying,
these nice cows.
Where you're expecting there to be like 4 cow sand roads.
Yeah.
There are, just don't go to them. It's like if you go to New York and don't go to Times Square.
Yeah, it would be like, I don't want to train in the Bronx because of Times Square.
Right,
and
but
I'm
it's like you actually have these little like niches and like beautiful little neighborhoods in New York that people who truly live there basically stay in their little 3-block radius all the time.
And Pattaya is like that too.
It's like that, yeah.
And so Pattaya is kind of like a secret in a way. There's lots of like gyms popping up there now, and Muay Thai scene is growing, but the like gross sex worker idea or drunk farang idea keeps a lot of people away, and it's kind of nice in a weird way because we don't even have any touch with that reality.
Yeah.
But I guess you only come to Pattaya if you're serious or not serious at all.
Yeah, and you can like find exactly where to fit into either of those slots.
But we get serious people in the gym, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Which is where we live now.
But so that's kind of what my resistance to Phuket was not like, oh my God, I never want to set foot there. I just did not anticipate liking it. But I was very excited when we were going to make this trip down. And indeed, we weren't actually going to Phuket. We were going to Phang Nga, which is above it, and decided to go down into Phuket in order to get Ruup. So I was actually excited to train with Ruup. So whatever feelings I have about not wanting to go to Phuket were mitigated by being excited to train with Ruup.
Okay, but I guess for me the story isn't, I had all these negative thoughts. My story is I had these like almost really snobby thoughts, really, to be honest about it. Like, you want the authentic whatever culture, whatever. And I was a little afraid, like when I went to Koh Tao and Koh Phi Phi many years ago, it was like there were no Thais living there who were not like in the tourist industry. They were there only for Westerners. There was no indigenous culture or anything.
Well, those are actual islands, right? Like that happens in like actual islands where everything kind of gets imported.
Yeah,
right?
That was my fear.
Yeah.
But I guess I stretched this out way too far. I was really charmed by Phuket. Like, I'm sure there are people listening who are like veterans of Phuket who are like, oh, you don't know the blah, blah, blah. Like, once you live somewhere, there's so many things to complain about if you are a complainer. I'm sure there's negatives. I was really charmed by Phuket. It was unexpectedly beautiful, like not overly developed. And I think I benefited from having 7 years, been in Thailand for 7 years, been all over the country, and really got us. We've been through so many towns of Thailand that coming to Phuket, all the Thainess of it came forward for me. Like I felt the Thainess of it, rather than I was afraid I was gonna see all the like non-Thainess.
Right.
Instead, the Thainess came forward, and it was a really like pleasant, charming. Like the vibe was low. It was visually beautiful. Like we were not far from Patong. We stayed not far from Patong, but just like 5 minutes down the road from Patong was just like cliffs and ocean and just beautiful. And we trained at this little Thai gym, Ali's gym, Crew Ali's gym, which is like
Pet Kalim.
Is that what it's
called? Ali's Pet Kalim. Yeah.
But it's just like a ring balanced on a cliff.
It's basically Master K's basement on a cliff face overlooking the ocean.
Yeah, if you've been following Sylvie or you've not been following Sylvie, you know Master K's basement is where Sylvie started in New Jersey in America. A basement where a 70-year-old Thai man who'd moved to America taught one of private lessons.
Just out of passion.
Out of passion.
Yeah.
And he's still teaching, and I think he's like 80 now.
More than, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, someone took Master K's basement and put it on a cliff overlooking beautiful blue water. And it was just like, Jesus, that I was very taken by that. And also how Crew Ali is kind of like Master K. Like, he's in his 60s. He lives in his own, like, passionate world of Muay Thai.
Yeah.
And has his, like, vision of what Muay is.
And he also has a very strong resistance to commercial Muay Thai. And to the gyms of Phuket that you and I would also be like, yeah, we're not going to go there.
Do not bring Tiger Muay Thai up, or Thai Fight, which was happening that week or night, up to Crew Ali, who, I mean, it was like the enemy of Muay Thai for him. He would go off on it. But this little niche, like, of Muay Thai that was sitting there in Phuket, just a stone's throw from Patong, which is supposedly the most touristed part of Phuket. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, there was a coolness to Patong and stuff like that was way more charming. Like, and I just kind of blew me away. So I guess what I'm saying is, just because you build up mental images about something doesn't mean you know fuck all what it really is.
What you're talking about.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and you make a very good point about Pattaya too. Like, I almost don't want to tell people, like, I like people being like, oh, don't go there, just a party, whatever. Like, there's some really good training around Pattaya.
The thing is, you make any place what it is by what you are. Like, it's that saying, you don't see the world for how it is, you see it how you are.
Yeah.
And that's true of anywhere you go. Like, there were so many people when we were in Chiang Mai who would come to Lana, and then they would end up going to the hill camp, which was the second camp that Andy ran, that was kind of the, like, you know, like resort style, go up into the mountains and everything's very minimal. You only have training, and these guys would come and they're like, I have to go to hill camp to get away from distractions. And we were like, what distractions? Like, just, we don't go anywhere. Yeah. So there are people who come to Pattaya who are like, oh, it's so distracting, like this whole thing. And we went and did a session for my patrons at Rahway. And the woman, Deanna, who invited us and who was giving me a tour of the camp, she made a good point. She said, we find that the closer you stay to the camp, the more training you do. And I think that there are people who choose areas of wherever they go that build in distraction or build in whatever the quality of that place is that you and I are like, we don't want that. You can find where not to stay there. Like, you can, it's like, don't stand there, don't stay there, don't go to Walking Street.
Yeah, but
like,
it's very hard to, like, figure that out from 5,000 miles away. That's the weird, I mean...
I don't think it's that hard. We'd never been to Phuket and we didn't run into that. Like, we knew how to stay away from that.
Yeah, but we purposely picked small. Like, we went in there with a very small eye. Like we went to Phuket King, right? To train with
Phuket King, yeah.
Phuket King Muay Thai. To train with Crew Pot, which was this sweet little gym in the middle of... I was surprised how many small little gyms. When Crew Pot is like a fucking legend of knee fighting. Like, here he is just hanging out, and he has this beautiful Muay, and he's like, it was just I don't know, the oasis of Muay that was sitting there in Phuket was really cool. And, you know, no Phuket king probably does not have Thai fighters. It's probably all Westerners, or almost all. But it had its own authenticity to it. And then Crew Ali had his own authenticity to it. And then I was like, then we went to Rahway, which is kind of a mega gym, right?
Right.
We went there to train with Chan Chai.
Chan Chai, yeah.
Chan?
Chan Chai, yeah.
Oh, Charn. Who's master of the Teep. We filmed with him for the Muay Thai Library. And I was like, you were really struck by the community there. You said, this reminds me of Lana when we first went to Lana.
Yep.
But here it was, it's like 2 hours from Phuket. And it was like, you know what I'm thinking about is like, when people are like, Sylvie, what gym should I go to? But it's impossible for us to answer those questions.
Totally.
But it's like, it's so nice when people find in a gym what they're looking for.
Right.
And I had that feeling about Rahway, is that everybody there found what they were looking for.
Why did you get that feeling? You said that while we were there. Like, as we were watching people milling around and going to their rooms.
I don't know. Deanna, is that her name? She was like, we get mostly beginners and intermediate. And there were some, and then we were there when there was no classes. It wasn't the normal training.
It was after morning training, so it was kind of like...
People were taking privates, I think. And you had like middle-age-ish people, not entirely, but middle-age-ish people taking privates who seemed like relatively in shape and really into learning their technique and getting their work in and getting their training. Was just everybody felt satisfied and stimulated in there. And I'm like, it's not on the beach, right? So they're not getting a resort thing. It's isolated to some degree. So everybody there is there to train. They're having a traincation, really. And it just felt like felt baby bear for what these people wanted.
Because it matched what people want and what they could get.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about almost all gyms in Thailand. Is there's a gym for everyone. Do you know what I mean?
That's that, like, everybody is somebody's fetish
That's
thing.
exactly.
Totally.
It's exactly that kind of thing. And it's like, you just have to find the one that kind of fits with you. And I felt like, wow, Rahway, even though it's like a kind of a mega gym, it fit all these people and they all seemed happy. And you were saying, or you seem to know, but we also got the feeling like people return to this gym over and over and over again. Like, they're not only have a satisfied experience, but they come for 5 years, 6 years, 10 years.
Yeah, like they come back every year.
They come back,
recurring,
they come back, which means they're really doing a great job of what they do.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
That's an important thing about gyms in general is I don't know if you would call it retention, but what I said to Deanna when we were doing the tour is that people will come to a gym because of what they see on Facebook or its reputation or what's searchable or whatever kind of like SEO you have is what will get people to come to the gym. But it's the soul of the gym that makes them either love it or not.
Yeah.
And people do not love every gym they go to. And it might not match, and it doesn't make that a bad gym. It just means you don't match.
I don't want to be giving gym advice to people, but one thing that we say often is if you're just coming for the first time, do not book, if you can avoid it. I mean, sometimes you can't avoid it, but do not book long prepaid stays at a gym in advance and pay them and everything. Because what you want, honestly, what you need to do is go to 3 gyms.
Yeah,
and just walk in the space and feel the soul of it, because the tone, the attitudes, the soul of every gym is different.
Yeah, don't agree to 5 dates. Go on 1. See how it goes out.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, have 3 first dates and even if you like something, like it's good to feel something else. Like when we first came to Thailand, we were at Lana, we had a great experience, and then we went down, we're like, we got to have another experience. So we went down to Sasa Prapa. This was like 10 years ago in Bangkok. But I'm like, if you go to Chiang Mai, go to 3 gyms, take a day of training, see how it feels. And this is the other problem where we don't want to get into advising gyms for people. The soul of gyms change a lot. I don't know how. Every gym which is a lot, but a gym might be great at one point, and then 6 months later, oh my God, it's not in a good place. Like a top crew left, or God knows their booking process
or
changed.
Or the people who are there at the
people,
time.
People in a gym impact, like the people training really impact this space. And so even if we thought that some gym has a great thing, in 6 months it might not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I guess for us, the thing, what we try to recommend is to try 3 gyms. Like, if you can avoid paying in advance. I know some of these gyms really like to book you up because they want people locked in.
Yeah, or there's packages.
And they want to know in advance the load of Westerners that they're going to be dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I'm still on this Phuket thing where I'm like, I don't know, for so long where you're like, Phuket? And I'm like, wow. Even in the like center of Patong, I'm like, it would be nice to fight here.
Yeah,
like for a long time, I was like, Patong Stadium. We've always seen images and everything like that, and a lot of the mega gyms like have pushed those images for many years, and I was like, wow, it would be kind of nice to fight here.
Yeah, Muay Thai is Muay Thai. Like, it's kind of find the heart of it everywhere you go.
The heart of it, yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm not sure that Patong Stadium is that much different than Taipei Stadium or
well, this is the amazing thing.
Kawela or Kalay.
Is that you have not really gone to Lumpini and Rajadamnern very much. But when I go with the gym, I'm always like, this is not that different from like Taipei or Tepasit or whatever. Like, it's even the national stadia are not that different from local stadia.
We joke, I mean, at least I joke how Lumpini Stadium is basically a mall.
The new one.
The new one. Well, everyone knows it's not the old one. The old one was knocked down. I don't know, we can talk about that another time. That I don't know, I'm just very charmed by something that I had resistance to. I had built up a resistance to, and I like when life surprises me that much.
Yeah, I think it's also a fault of ours, and it's not. It is snootiness, but it's just, this is what it is that like what you understand about something is just whatever you've seen of it. And so don't think you know by experience when you've like seen the commercial version of something.
Yeah.
When we went from Chiang Mai to Pattaya for the first time, what really struck me and kind of made me be very surprised and in love with Pattaya was the difference in the Thai culture that existed kind of under the tourist part of it.
Well, it's not under, it's a set aside.
Right, but what was very different from the way that it is in Chiang Mai. One, it's a different culture, but two, the way it interacts with Western influence is different. And then when we came...
Well, you're being very abstract. So, was it that, for instance, not a lot of people spoke English?
That was difficult for me because I was not used to speaking Thai so consistently.
Yeah, but it was interesting to find that that far fewer people spoke English. In Chiang Mai, there was a lot of English to be had.
I was forced to speak more. My Thai has gotten so much better because we moved to Pattaya. Yeah.
But even that, you wouldn't have anticipated that.
What I said 5 years ago when we moved to Pattaya was that in Chiang Mai, there's a lot of expats in Chiang Mai, like long-term expats, and then there's tourism, and it's very integrated. Like the business and the culture are very intertwined in Chiang Mai. In Pattaya, I like that they're actually a little bit separated. It's all, I say that the like Farangness is like this film that floats on top of the like kind of core Thai-ness that's still in Pattaya, and you can still kind of see and feel the like fishing village community of it when you get near the water, which is kind of cool to me. And then you don't have this because you don't speak Thai, but when we went down to Phuket, the accent, just the accent, was blowing my mind. It's such a different way of talking. It would be like if you'd been watching Hollywood movies for years and you went to America and you went to Kentucky or something, and you're like, these people do not talk like Brad Pitt or whatever. Like, this is crazy. But it's a very particular accent and way of speaking, and it expresses the culture, which I do not know a lot about, but it expresses this identity in a really strong way. And I actually know this Karchuk promoter for years now. He's from the South.
Somebody I don't know.
The guy who does the announcing with the square face.
Oh, the main guy, okay.
When he talks to me anywhere else that I've done a Karchuk fight with him, I have never noted an accent. But when he went home, when he went south, his accent came out.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. I never noticed that Ajahn Surat speaks a little bit with a southern accent. Just a little bit. Like
Only
the way
a
that he
little?
speaks. Oh.
I thought it was a lot.
No. In the South, people with the southern accent, it is strong. But it's like how, when I'm really sensitive to accents, so sometimes when Kevin and I are watching a movie, we'll be 30 minutes into it with a main character, and I'm like, that actor's hiding an accent. And then we discover they're Australian later or something, and it's just certain words. That's what it's like with Ajahn Surat, is certain words will kind of like
He gets the twang,
have that
twang
little
going.
up thing that they do. But those are like the little details of a culture that, looking online at like which mega gym am I going to go to, you would have no concept that even if you go to one of these mega gyms that I think I would be super unhappy at, maybe there's a trainer there who expresses southernness in a way that you're like really charmed by.
Totally. So this is basically like a thumbs up to Phuket segment.
Yeah. The beaches are really pretty.
I don't know. Did you just knock down our argument or something? What
I
was
said
you
the
saying?
beaches are really pretty.
So you're saying yeah?
Yeah.
Dude, thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up.
You lost me there actually a little bit.
Go back to what you were saying. Thumbs up to Phuket.
Oh, okay. So if this didn't thrill you a little bit, we're gonna make a hard right turn on the next on the next subject. That was just us kind of talking our experience. I guess I'm still kind of like freaked out about how much I'd liked Phuket. Baby, we're moving to Phuket.
No. Phuket. It's not happening.
Okay. Next subject. Rolling.
So, in the years that we've been in Thailand, we've been here 7 years for people who don't know.
We're coming on 8 years actually.
In April.
It's pretty
It'll be
close.
8. That's
Pretty
crazy.
close, right?
That's crazy. So we were 2 years in Chiang Mai, and we've been in Pattaya for 5 years. In that time, I've learned Thai. I've kind of been told the same thing over and over again by many different trainers. And when this happens and you spend a lot of time and you've been told the same thing, you kind of get depths of understanding
There's
about
like
something.
layers, like sabai was something which is basically relax.
So you will hear your trainer tell you sabai, relax, all this stuff a lot. Even if you're here for 1 day, you will hear this. But I'm very tense. I'm much less tense than I used to be when I first came here, super like whatever. And I always really struggled with a trainer telling me to relax or sabai while I was training, because it's like, how can I relax when I'm trying to do something that is not natural to me, or that I'm getting punched in the face? Like, I'm not super relaxed when someone's trying to hit me. And it eventually, my understanding of it has just kind of gone through these layers and revelations and depths and all these things to understand that relax is not as simple as I thought it was.
Let me give an idea. Like what this subject is about when you're here for a little bit, you get a pretty good understanding, a working understanding of a phrase that you hear over and over again, or a command you hear over and over again. And that working understanding gets you through almost all situations. It can get you through stuff for several years. You're like, you kind of understand what sabai mean. meant. Like, you understood that for a long time. You're not confused about it. And then one day something happens and you're like, holy fuck. I thought it meant relax. Or we're just using sabai as an example. I thought it meant what I've been, we have a checkpoint?
What do you have?
Got, a little,
he's sniffing their,
dog.
it's a working dog.
Yeah,
Police dog.
So, I thought it meant such and such. Suddenly I realized the whole time my working definition wasn't covering something super important.
Right.
So that's what we're kind of, just to give people the lay of the land, this is about one of those things.
And this is what's beautiful about my Thai getting better and my Muay Thai getting better in tandem, is that in having fluency in both, there's this thing about language that's amazing, which is that there's the connotation and the denotation, and they're not always the same. So for people who don't know what that means, denotation is the literal meaning of a word.
Definite.
The connotation is like kind of the general feeling around it that can be different from the denotation. So
what adds color or use, importance, context of a word.
So like, I don't know, if you say forget about it, the denotation is you stop, like you literally forget it. The connotation is don't worry about it, you're probably still gonna obsess about that. Don't make a big deal about it.
Yeah.
So the most recent one that I had a like epiphany about, and why we're talking about this as a segment and my long ass introduction to it, is the other day I was doing pads with Cruden, who's this 60-plus-year-old pad man at my gym who actually was a trainer for my trainer, Crenu, when Crenu was a teenager. He's been there forever. He's very cheeky. He's like very, he's always making a joke about something. He's funny, but a little bit gruff. He was holding pads for me, and he was very positive recently about my power. He's like, you should just right kick and right punch all the time because you have incredible power in both of these things. And I had a cold right before we came down to Phuket, so I was not feeling great during training, and I really didn't want to do pads. But I was doing pads with him, and I felt like I was hitting really hard with my strikes, and I was. But at the end of those rounds, whereas he's usually very complimentary and he's like, great, he was like, today, Mai Mi Lang. I have heard Mai Mi Lang, it means no power, like you don't have power, many, many, many times. And I realized in that moment when he said it to me, because of my actual experience of that pad work and how I felt, that what ties mean, and not every second, but what they mean what they often, that is lost in translation between the denotation and connotation of Mai Mi Lang, is, as a Westerner, as me, as whatever, I always thought that no power Mai Mi Lang had to do with the strikes.
Like how hard
are you
hitting
kicking
the pad.
And they'll totally make fun of men. They're like, oh, you went out last night, you have no power, whatever your thing is, blah, blah, blah. And you think they're talking about strikes.
But the consequences of when you get told no power
is you try to hit harder.
Hit harder. Like you start, I'll show
and
you.
And you make yourself more tired. What I realized, because my fucking strikes had power in them.
Yeah.
I was impressed by how much power I had. I'm like, I'm doing great given how horrible I feel.
Yeah.
He did not mean my strikes. He meant everything between my strikes, and he actually demonstrated this little like kind of Dieselnoi oatmeal falling apart between things. And it's the lack of power is what in Thai they call Ruup. Ruup is your body or your like visage. And so
that's a good word for
between my strikes, my composure and form did not express strength. And so where I was like, my strikes are strong, what are you talking about? No Mai Mi Lang, no power, I'm striking hard. He's like, you're demonstrating your lack of power between all your strikes. And so this Mai Mi Lang thing, which they will use when a fighter has lost too much weight or whatever, it's this whole like, oh, he could have fought better, but Mai Mi Lang kind of thing. It's the same thing as if like you read all the words and you thought it was about the words, but it's actually about everything that isn't said in between. And it blew my mind, this revelation.
Well, it's a term that you had developed an emotional connection and understanding to for years. Like, you've been told it, you'll be told this all the time in Thailand.
But understanding what it actually means that you can then practice the right part.
Yeah.
So instead of, oh, I have to hit harder, my strikes have to be stronger, in which case your Ruup between shit is actually going to look even worse. When you understand that it means everything in between, and you're like, okay, I can kick relaxed or as hard as I'm kicking, but don't show anything in between.
Yeah.
That's what Dieselnoi is constantly working on with our fighters. Constantly. Is Ruup.
Yeah.
And is this
Well, talk a little bit more about Ruup, because this is a big area of mistranslation between cultures.
Well, you talk about Ruup because you're going to be talking about Ruup.
No, but I want you to talk about it in terms of like the fact that Thais prize Ruup in watching fights. Like, I don't know, like from my perspective, Western sports oriented, when you see like an elite, my generation, like Michael Jordan or something, Magic Johnson or something, when you watch them move through on the court or across the field, their Ruup, their visage is evident in every step they take.
It's like charisma. It's like how Karahat said that fighters nowadays don't have charisma.
Yeah. It's their physical expression in the playing zone at all moments, not just when they're hitting the game-winning shot or whatever. Their entire expression of themselves as a person in the ring, like in Thailand, it's in the ring, which includes walking back to your corner and whatnot. That this is really what is prized in assessing a fighter, whether a fighter is winning a fight or whether they're worthy of praise in general. And this is something that Westerners just totally miss.
Yeah.
And including us for many years and still to this day.
I believe that I have lost fights that I thought I won or whatever because like I hurt someone more, scored more or whatever, but my opponent's Ruup, their composure and their ability to look unperturbed or be like, I'm still on balance, I'm still this. After fights, you're like, she didn't do anything. And it's like, but I know she looked better. Like, I know she looked better.
And you almost say that with like a disdain, like, oh, you just were faking or putting on a performance. But this is not appreciating how much Ruup is prized in, and we'll go into this in another couple segments probably, but probably going to be a theme in this podcast. It's prized as a, as the truth telling of the nature of a fighter. And it's why Samart is probably considered the greatest ever by most Thais, was because of his Ruup performance throughout fights. They would put him against very savage, aggressive fighters, like Muay Thai fighters, and he was able to maintain his fluidity and his movement in a trueness of Ruup. And this is not just to talk about what Ruup means. It's like one of the touchstones of what Muay Thai is, that if you come from other combat sport traditions, you might not understand how important that is. Now, the hard part is to understand this is what it has to be trained in the gym.
And it's what strength is.
But it's not just physical strength, but it's also like strength of presence, right?
Yeah.
Like a very like soft-styled female fighter can have great strength through their Ruup. They're like maintaining the Ruup under duress.
Yeah.
And this is what's so cool is Sylvie is fucking a cardio machine. She's known for her strength, her physical strength and endurance, and Kuden, who's always positive, he's a pretty upbeat guy, especially for a Thai. He's like, no, today the Ruup is broken, and it's so cool because the challenge really is you need to be training your Ruup,
Yeah.
not training the explosive sound on the pads.
Yeah, I mean, you'll actually see people, Westerners, who don't understand this concept or who don't understand the Thai aesthetic. And there's the like blast your 10 kicks and then put your hands on your hips and pant and walk around.
Yeah.
And it's like that SNL skit with the woman who's so hot. She's got this Marilyn Monroe thing. She's so hot.
Kristen Wiig.
And then she's like slurping her cappuccino and like
Breaking the spell.
It's so disgusting.
Breaking
and everyone,
the spell.
like all the men in the office are kind of like confused by the conflict of so hot and so disgusting at the same time. Is that like when you're doing that, you don't know what you're expressing, because in Western culture, showing your struggle or showing your effort is rewarded for some reason.
Yeah.
In Thai, it's a complete break of Ruup, and they do not care how hard you kicked those pads. It's like you basically like just acted like a badass and then pissed yourself. Like it doesn't make any sense.
I have to say, maybe this is the time to add the like Dieselnoi or Golden Age thing. Is that we're talking in ideal terms here. Every gym has different standards of Ruup, different thresholds of what good and like how hard they hold you to this concept, this principle. What we found was when we brought Dieselnoi, who, if you don't know, he's the greatest knee fighter ever, possibly the greatest fighter ever of the Golden Age. We brought him into the gym. He set an electric charge through the gym. That our gym is a real Thai gym. Like, its main focus is raising Thai boys to be stadium champions. And some of the best fighters of Thailand have come out of here. PTT.
Jadukam, who's now called Tawan Chai.
Tawan Chai, the fighter of the year, came out as a boy, was raised through there. And so the core of the gym is still this real Thai thing, but it's integrated with Western training experiences too. And he came through there, and his main focus was like raising the level of Ruup among the Thai boys.
Yeah.
And one of the more interesting things, and it's captured in your Kai Moi diaries a little bit, right?
Yes.
Was the way that he trained Bang.
Yep.
Tong Chai. Krunu's son. He was urging Bang for sure, more intensity, more explosiveness. Dieselnoi's famous for a very viral pad work round of his from his old days. He's just relentless on the pads. But what was so interesting was how almost more intensity he gives to the Thai fighter after the pad round is over.
Like the recovery.
The recovery was like stand up straight. Like,
but that's the thing. That's like the gazelle thing, where like if you have like a lion that's hunting a gazelle, and the gazelle is totally fucking out of energy and might just lay down and die, if it does a little like jump thing to show that it still has energy, the lion might quit.
That little kick it does.
It's like, oh man, I can't keep up with that, forget it, I'll find a sicker one or whatever.
Right.
Is that the thing about Bank and the thing about me that Krunu knows is that our strength is our strength. Like, we are powerful, like enduring fighters, and so he trains our strength. Right. Krunu does not emphasize Ruup the way that Dieselnoi does, but in what Dieselnoi is emphasizing in like rolling.
Okay, so we had a little battery drop out, so we're not quite sure how much we missed. So we're gonna start right at when I was talking about when we brought Dieselnoi into the gym. If you don't know who he is, arguably the greatest fighter ever, definitely the greatest knee fighter ever from the Golden Age. And we brought him into this gym, and for me it was just fucking insane to see him bring in this intensity of training that I personally believe is probably lost to all of Thailand. Like the way that the Hopalong gym trained, or these Muay Thai gyms trained. They trained, I don't know, my theory is that it wasn't crews that made Yod Muay in the golden age. It was camps. And camps produced multiple champions not because the crew was teaching this super secret technique. It was because these tempos and standards were kept within a community of boys who were all growing together, and steel sharpens steel in the ethic of the camp.
Yeah, it's like a pack.
Like a pack. And those packs no longer really exist in Thailand. Even in like artificially made packs like PK Sanchai Gym or something like that, where they basically buy up the contracts of some of the best fighters in Thailand and try to create a pack. The ethic, the culture of those training gyms in the 90s, I think no longer exists. They're like ecosystems that no longer exist. So when you bring in Dieselnoi, one of the things he brings, besides like technical knowledge, is he brings his memory of the music of his training. And he imposed that music on an already functioning Thai gym with Thai boys that were training to become potential stadium champions. And it was really neat to see him take on Bank.
Yeah.
Bank is Krunu's son, is a stadium fighter. Everything good?
Yep.
What can you maybe jump in and talk about this Ruup training that he brought to Bank?
Well, I don't know whether it made it on the last recording or not, but I was talking about how when you show that you have more, there are a lot of fighters who have this really, Thai fighters have this really beautiful thing in the way that they progress throughout a fight, which is like, I haven't had to get out of second gear yet.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a femur thing to like, don't make me go harder than I have to, but then you do have another gear. The thing with strong fighters, and Bank is not Muay Thai, Bank is like Muay Mat, he's like a puncher, but he's really powerful. And me as a Muay Thai fighter, I'm always coming forward. This kind of thing is that the thing about us that's exhausting is that we're powerful and that we will keep coming. But if you don't train those moments between things, you're not sending the message, I can do that again. Which Dieselnoi, when he is like on Bank between rounds, and this is just in the gym, in your home gym, nobody's watching, your dad is training you, you're like, I'm gonna go get some water and huff between rounds, because the Italians that come to the gym with their, Kevin calls it kennel cough, the way that they like, and like sigh about how tired they are. Some of the Thai boys like pick that up. That's why we call it kennel cough, is that it kind of like is contagious. Dieselnoi is working against that, where it's like, there is no second, even when nobody is in the gym with you, when you're hitting the bag alone and you're walking to get some water, you walk like, I can do that again, I can do this all day. Dieselnoi talked about how he would be alone in the gym when everyone else had already gone home and his training wasn't finished yet because he was like Muay Thai, and he's like, I would cry. He's like, everyone had gone home and I'm doing more knees on the bag, crying. It's like, cry, but you can do that again.
But your Ruup doesn't show that you're crying.
Never breaks.
The Ruup does not show.
And the thing is, it becomes very real. Like, if you have that kind of confidence in yourself from that kind of training, the strength that you have is even more real. Like, if you believe I can do that again, it's so different from practicing like, oh, when is this the last round yet?
Well,
like,
this is
so
the
hard.
really interesting. I mean, Thai training is known as like brutal training. The heat is up. Thais do lots of rounds. They do lots of bag rounds. Especially when they're pushing for a fight, it's world famous. What people don't realize that, and maybe it's even been lost to Thailand in many gyms, is that the real training is between all of that, because it's Ruup that's being trained. It's like, God, it's like you watch a samurai like pull his sword out and slice some bamboo stick 27 times, but it's really, how did he put his sword back in? You know, which is actually a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a reason for that, Because how you put your sword back in will dictate how you pull your sword out and how you use your sword. It gives you an intensity of focus that elevates everything you do. It's not just about like not letting your opponent see that you're weak.
But there's also,
it's about a focus.
Yes, and it's personal, like it's your own belief of yourself. And
I'll talk about that a little bit.
What I was just realizing just now thinking about it, because Crew does focus on Ruup to a degree. Not nearly the way that Dieselnoi does. But if you show that you're tired, if you show that you're hurt, if you give like a shit attitude about something, he'll give you more. He's like, okay, now you do 50 more kicks kind of thing.
Totally.
But if you don't internalize it and have your own autonomy and self-belief about those things, I know to hide pain or hide fatigue because I don't want 50 more kicks.
Yeah.
That's obedience. That's not the same thing as I can do this all day. Like if I had Dieselnoi's never breaking Ruup, when Pinu knows I'm exhausted and he's gonna make me do 50 more, if I can give him the look that's like, yes sir, may I have another, like, I'll do 50 on top of that. Like,
exactly.
I can do this all day. Like, you get tired holding pads for me.
Totally.
Like, that's what Dieselnoi's going
There's
for.
a famous samurai, I don't know why I'm bringing samurais now, but famous samurai phrase, which I really like, that I sent to you saying, which was a tiger's skin and a dog's belly. Mm-hmm. That, and the dog being a street dog who's starving. And he's like, even when you have nothing in your stomach, you should look like you just ate. Yeah. Like you're like wiping your mouth of the feast you just had.
It was performance.
It's that performance. It's that your outside thing. And part of this has to do with Asian culture, which is about face, right? What you show to others is more highly valued in Asian cultures. But the result of that is not just like, oh, just put on a good face. It's asking your soul and your spirit and your mind to ascend to a higher standard, which will eventually be showing itself in your actual strikes, in your actual ability to defend and continue the narrative you're telling in Muay Thai, right?
Yeah.
In a fight. And it's like, I don't know, there's something to me, I'm like, Patron is a pretty good gym, and there's almost no gym in Thailand that weaves together real family style Thai boy training, and then it just incorporates Westerners into it. Like Pinu's like, yes, get on my program.
Yeah.
Like that, it's pretty unusual how interconnected they are. There's no separation really, or very little separation, I'd say. And I'm like, but it does not have what Dieselnoi knows, what Hippie knows, like what these golden age people know, who were raised in camps of there was a different standard then.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know that there's anywhere in Thailand. Like the whole thing is eroding in a very sad way.
Well, that's been kind of an incredible secondary revelation of the Muay Thai library for me, is that we're like, let's preserve technique because Muay Thai is changing. Yeah. Muay Thai does not look the way it used to.
Yeah.
And anyone I bring this up to emphatically nods their heads. Like everyone knows that Muay Thai is changing.
Yeah.
But we're like, what's beautiful about this long form version is that you also get to archive the men. Like you also get to see what Sagat is like, what Dieselnoi's like, what Karahat's like, because you can't explain that shit. It's not the same. Like you have to see it.
Yeah, because of the Ruup.
The further revelation is that not all these guys are trainers that we go to see. Like sometimes they're like, sure, I can teach you my style, but they're not teachers.
Yeah.
What one of my favorite revelations of the library has been is that on top of the technique and of the men, they teach you how to train. And as much as technique is changing and disappearing, golden age training is fucking gone. It's already gone.
I think we're not connected to like total Thai gyms in the sun or whatnot, but it feels like it's gone.
Yeah.
And I think it shows even in stadium Muay Thai, like the top stadium fighters are not anywhere near what they
because
were
you train for what the current situation of the sport is. Like,
Yes.
if Muay Thai were still like Golden Age Muay Thai, you'd still be training like Golden Age Muay Thai.
Yeah.
But you train for what the sport is now, and so people train towards that. It's like how you study for the test.
Totally. So, well, can you, just for a moment, I have a vision of it, but can you talk a little bit about what, I just had this thing where Bank just ended a round of pads, which was exhausting, and Dieselnoi screaming in his ear to go harder or knee more.
During the round.
During the round. And then when the round ends, Dieselnoi runs up to Bank and is like, can you describe what that is? Have you paid attention to what he does?
Yeah,
I mean, he does it with everybody in a way, but Bank especially.
This is not unusual, but like when fighters are getting ready for a fight, there will be a lot of the type of stuff that you would see in a fight. So between rounds, they're rubbing water on their limbs. They're kind of doing massage, telling them to breathe, this kind of thing. Dieselnoi will fan out your arms like you are breathing, like get air into your lungs. He does vigorous limb massage, but he spends a lot of focus on the lower back and the stomach, which actually hurts. The way he massages your lower back and your stomach is painful, but it actually, and because I've experienced this, makes you able to breathe more when he's done.
And
like it
feels
opens
like he
your
wants
diaphragm.
you to open up and stand up, like proud.
Yeah.
Like it looks like he's like, be proud,
It's
like
posturing,
stand up, your
yeah.
posture. But it's also this part of like opening yourself up
Yeah.
to your breath.
And then he like massages your temples and like, what is in Blade Runner when they poke JR's eyes out or whatever. It's
Massage
like
your eyes.
he like massages your eyes. He pushes your eyes so hard.
Eyebrows.
And it totally is just this like waking up,
But
reawakening.
it's this like
between rounds.
this vitalization that occurs after you just gave it out on the pads, and it's the exact opposite of
Sit
turning,
down.
not even sit down, hang yourself over the ropes. This is a really bad habit that a lot of Westerners do, is
Yeah.
they hang themselves over the ropes. In the West, we also like to indicate how tired we are to show your trainer that you gave it your all.
Yeah.
So there is a kind of like, you really like to over dramatize sometimes the effort you put forward, which is the exact opposite of Ruup maintenance. And I think it's just a cultural difference in a certain regard. Some people will even throw themselves on the ground
Not usually between rounds, but
at the end
for
of
sure.
a round, at the end of the 4 rounds
All
or
the
3 rounds, be like, just to show how dead you are. And I don't know, I find it kind of interesting to make another little side. This subject has so many little side paths. One of the, like, in Thai camps, in Kai Muay, and they're all different kinds, Westerners come and they get exposed to Thai culture and Thai style training and Thai techniques and Ruup type priorities. You know, this happens all over the place. So they're Thai culture, Thai styles are being transmitted to the West. The Westerner is also influencing the Thai.
Yes.
And in a gym like patron, where there is close connections between the Thais and the Westerners, is that there might be a lot of influence. We were talking about this like kennel cough of the sigh after a hard round that is very un-Thai, but quite Western or European. Is like, the dramatic thing is that we have to keep in mind that the West is also influencing Thailand.
Yes.
Like you see it in Max Muay Thai, these hybrid shows, this uber aggression shows. Also in terms of no longer prizing Ruup.
You
Like
also,
a big,
weirdly,
powerful...
You see it in Bukhao. Like Bukhao makes these very weird faces now. He does this like grimacing, like raging
I don't know
thing.
if that's Japanese anime
It's
culture
not Thai.
or
Whatever
it's not
it is.
Thai.
It's not Thai.
And other people do it too because
Yeah.
it's commercially, it has legs.
Yeah.
But it also might be Western also in a certain regard. This showing of intensity, this kind kind of
aggro or something.
Maybe it's a Schwarzenegger-ish kind of quality. I wonder. It's just something to think about. Is that Ruup appreciation or the demand of training Ruup is fading in Thailand just as the like unfolding of time happens, but then you have actual impact of the West on Thai gyms, where you're changing the culture.
It's like fingerprints on glass.
Yeah, fingerprints on glass, if you are training in a gym where Thais train alongside Westerners, those Thais are probably being influenced by the people around them. Like, it cannot help but happen.
It's a two-way street. Like,
right?
People want to come to Thailand and train in an authentic Thai gym. They want to be surrounded by Thais with this idea that you're just gonna like flow into and be completely absorbed by or something. But like you interact with the environment as well. You bring your own stuff as well. I've influenced my gym a lot.
Well, especially towards the way women are.
Yeah, but also
treated.
like when I learned those knees from Longsuan or from Dieselnoi, and I come into the gym and I start doing them, and they're like, "Oh my God, I remember we used to do that," and then all the boys started doing it.
That's the crazy thing, is that you actually influence your gym in this weird way, where you like take a trip through time and train with legends of the golden age in the old ways, and then you bring those practices into your Thai gym, and your trainers are like,
nostalgia.
Oh my God, that's how I trained as a kid, and they no longer train that way. I remember, weren't you doing those long swung knees at Lana even?
No.
We were visiting. No, you did something at Lana, and they were like,
maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were just training there for a day or something. I don't know what we were doing, and they were like, yes, this is how it used to be done.
Yeah.
You've been influencing in a good way. I'm like, the Westerner in the like Thai gym has had a corrosive effect on the very thing that you're trying to learn from and absorb. And this could be in a good way. I mean, it could be that the Thai boys in your gym now can fight on Western oriented shows more. They can fight in kickboxing and maybe take advantage of commercial opportunities fighting outside of just Thai style. There could be good advantages in that, but there is also a kind of like dilution and loss of the training culture itself that's already eroding for other reasons. The main reason being there's no, I gotta pass this bus.
Yeah, but so two-way street of influence, but in terms of which current is better, take the Thai Ruup. Don't take the Western Ruup.
Totally. How far are we on this time-wise?
20 minutes on the reset.
Okay,
and
so
I need to pee.
Okay, let's stop this, and there's one more dimension of this about Ruup training that's really cool that I want to get to, okay? Are we rolling?
We are rolling.
Rolling. Okay, this is another dimension of this, which is really fucking cool. There is this Western perspective that Thais are kind of dumb. They don't understand science. The way they train is inefficient. They don't know how to hack the body or the diet or whatever. Never mind that what Thais know is the result of thousands and thousands of trainings and fights, and like when a Thai trainer is putting you through something, it's because hundreds of people have gone through it, and I suspect that they know a whole lot of stuff that they couldn't write down in a book. But they know some shit. This is really interesting about Ruup and Sylvie's experience with Cruden. Cruden is a pretty, like, as she said, he's kind of a cheeky guy. In no gym would he be like some like top crew or trainer. He doesn't get paid, I don't think, for what he does. He comes and he trains the boys, most of the Thai boys. It doesn't really hold for Westerners that much. because he enjoys it. But he's been around for decades.
Yeah.
Right?
He promotes the fights at the bar. So
Yeah,
he's seen
but
like millions of little kids.
Yeah,
come
just
through.
little kids fight there. But we're talking about not like the genius coach of Thailand. And then what he says to Sylvie is, Mai Mi Lang, like something anyone would say. This is the thing that's really cool. I wrote a forum post. I'll link it in the description. Wrote a forum post about this because I was reading about the most tech. I'm trying to pass somebody here 1 second. My distraction. The most advanced science of in the NBA of examining an NBA player's like peak performance and looking for warning signs of injury and whatnot.
High-tech sports science.
High-tech sports science. And I'm like, wow. And I'll link this. I'll link the article. It was a Sports Illustrated article, I think, but it's in my forum post. And I'm gonna have Sylvie read two passages that are really interesting. To me. It might be a little bit boring. I'll try to draw the connections between the two of them. Okay?
In 700 meters, you need to turn right.
Okay.
All right. Load management as a concept, isn't new to the NBA, even if the terminology might be. Gary Vitti saw the process of managing players' fatigue evolve during the 32 years he spent with the Lakers as a trainer. When he first started in Los Angeles, Vitti had to use his own eyes and intuition to tell when a player was slipping into what he calls postural distortion, or what Thais call breaking Ruup.
Oh, you just popped that in, right?
When a player's movements are noticeably less sharp, raising the possibility of injury. So that's the first quote.
First quote, and there's the second quote.
Vitti was able to put a number on a player's quote-unquote load and their quote-unquote intensity. So those are the two key words, load and intensity.
Load and intensity, yeah.
Vitti said he took the average speed of a player and multiplied it by the average distance, and then by the player's weight to get their load. Divide that number by how many minutes the player played, and you get their intensity. The relationship between the two numbers helped determine whether a player could be pushed or needed to be limited in practices or in games. So basically, like, how close are you redlining in your personal
Yes.
maxes? What we're looking for was a direct linear relationship between load and intensity, Vitti says. If the load was going up, we want intensity to go up with it. If it did, then you were in a green zone and we could push you. The management portion comes in once a player's intensity levels flattens. When that happens, Vitti says a player enters a yellow zone, meaning if their load is not decreased, it can lead to a danger zone where injury risk is high.
Okay. So this is what's so cool. First, Gary Vitti is talking about that he looks for postural distortion in players during practice and in games, probably. If he sees postural distortion, he's like, there's a possibility of injury here. It means their load is high and they're not able to keep it together. Their Ruup is breaking in some way. And you see this not when the jump shot's happening, but as they're moving through space. What's this diagnostic, and he's obviously talking about experience. He's somebody probably with 3 or 4 decades of experience at the pro level. He's talking about doing the eye test on an athlete while they're performing their sport and being able to see, just like you were talking about a cheetah looking at antelopes and looking for the one to go after. He's doing an eye test on the Ruup of players. And this is the really interesting thing. It's like when Cruden is saying to you, Mai Mi Lang, he's saying your Ruup is not together. He's like Gary Vitti at the fucking highest level of sports science, the Los Angeles Lakers, looking at a player and being like, there's postural distortion.
Yeah, so like, Vitti's like, I've got an app for this that's got all these, like, I divided this by that and blah, 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 and Cruden's like, I looked at you.
No, it's not that like that. The reason why he's got an app for it is that he's got a tremendous amount of data that he can track all the players and basically create a very broad snapshot of load and intensity for all of his players.
In order to manage their training.
To manage them. So it's not a perfect science, but it's a scientific approach to something that somebody as simple as Cruden already knows. This is the thing I think that's missing from the Western perspective. He's like, okay, your postural distortion is happening. We might need to bring your load down, like how much work you're doing. What the Thais are doing is they're training your Ruup. They're training your intensity. The rule that they found, that the Lakers found, was if load is high, intensity has to be high. So what Dieselnoi is doing, are we good with time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What Dieselnoi is doing when he comes to a Thai who's training for fights, he's like, your load is high. You're gonna be fucking ripping on these pads. Redline this. But he's like, maintain your Ruup, which means when you come off the pads, your intensity is still there.
Right.
Maintain all your intensity. What the Thais are doing is not managing your load, but they're managing your intensity by making Ruup a really, really important value. And what ends up happening, I think, is that because you're paying attention to Ruup so much, when Ruup really starts to decay, even a little bit, you know that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? If your Ruup decays all the time, there's no way to measure what's happening.
Yeah.
There's no signal.
There's no baseline.
There's no baseline.
Yeah.
So what the Thais are doing, I believe, especially in the Golden Age, is they're creating a baseline that is of intensity and focus that is so sensitive that even small changes the trainer can read. Right? So maybe in the West, it's like, what's your variable heart rate when you wake up? What's your morning heart rate? The Thais are reading it through a very high threshold of Ruup ordinance.
Yeah. But you're also able to see, it's the same way that when I watch Golden Age fighters face Dieselnoi, and I'm like, these guys must have been so strong because I know how hard Dieselnoi knees, and these guys are taking them.
Well, we'll talk about this later, but you've actually never seen that until recently because there's been no footage of that.
Okay, same. My point being, guys were so strong in the Golden Age. Their Ruup was so incredible in the Golden Age as well, that when you see someone like Long Soan get tired, like Samart's Ruup falls apart, like Wang Chenoi doesn't want anymore, like these guys, their line is so high. When you see Karahat give up in a fight, it's like, fuck, that must have been intense to get that point because that Ruup is so well trained.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, I don't know. I wonder if what has happened since the Golden Age, because Ruup has become less important in Thailand among Thais, is that they've maintained the load dimension of it to a high degree. Like, they still do the pretty heavy work.
Yes.
But because the intensity, remember the rule is if load is high, intensity has to be high.
Yeah.
Intensity are all the things between the performance of the load. Like on the basketball court, it's like, how quickly are you moving from spot to spot, right? That's what he tracks, speed, right? Distance covered. For Dieselnoi, it's like, how are you walking to get water? And this is the very interesting thing, is like, if you can maintain your focus, and we're calling it intensity, but maybe it's just the sharpness of your mind or your attentiveness to what you're doing, you will avoid injury.
Yes. You
will avoid decay. Like, I think runners probably do this, like ultra runners. Oh, here we have another stop. 1 second. Cut. Is that when you're running, if you're running for great distances, you need to maintain your form. Otherwise, you will injure yourself. like your running form becomes really important because you're repeating it so much, right?
This is something Crew Ali said, who we trained for. We trained for the Muay Thai library. Old school, all about technique. It's also something that I've heard from a number of these kind of old school trainers or fighters, is that when you focus on technique, or when you have really good technique, they're like, you can fight for a long time. They mean not being injured. Like, if you fight like an idiot, maybe samong, right? Like, you don't think, no IQ, you're just like getting bashed, no technique, just power. They're like, you just get hurt. Like, you're gonna be hurt all the time. If you have shitty running form, lots of people who are really great runners have pretty shitty form, but they have something within it that allows them to kind of like keep it all together. If you're just like me suddenly becoming a like ultra marathoner, I'm totally gonna get injured. Like, I don't know.
But it's not just like the prettiness of your kick.
No, that's not what technique is. We think that's what that is.
We think that's, but it's everything else between. It's like you were saying about language. If you had all the words, but you didn't know how to use them.
Well, this goes into my training with Chanchai. Chanchai is the teep king. So when we started getting into his teep, we're spending like 40 minutes on details of the teep, because he can fight entire fights against really amazing fighters basically just teeping. He is Muay Teep.
Yeah.
What was revealed to me, because I'm not a beginner, was I started being able to feel all the tiny little details in why those teeps are different, or why his teep is working and mine isn't. And there were these micro weaknesses in my ankle that were making me constantly have to rebalance myself. Those are the kinds of things that cause injury. Like, when I started doing the Long Swan 1000 out of nowhere, it wasn't because 1,000 knees on the bag is too much load. It's because I don't have the micro techniques in my ankles with the strength to be able to do that without causing strain injury. Like, I actually hurt the tendon on my inside of my leg when I started doing that. And it's that, like, my technique is not quite right.
Yeah, but ideally, that will shape your technique. Like, your technique grows.
Works together.
Like, if something isn't working right together because of your high repetitions, it's like water pouring down a hill. You have to find a way to produce those movements that smooth out your technique.
Totally.
You don't go to Arjan Charnchai and he goes, oh, you need your ankle to do this little angle and now your teep is fixed. It's from thousands of teeps that your ankle starts to gain stability.
Yeah, and he actually said it's from running. He had me do a sprint back and forth, and he's like, you run wrong. It's like, that totally makes sense.
For what he's doing,
that you actually build up your ankle strength doing something totally repetitive like running.
So I guess what my take on this is, the diminishment of Ruup importance in Thailand is happening in the culture already. Like, Golden Age fighters trained in atmospheres and kaimois that had a fabric of Ruup focus that is well beyond probably what Thai kaimois are doing now. So it's already eroding. But if you come to Thailand and you're like so focused on the technique, the proper angle of the foot and making sure everything's pretty, and even your descriptions seem to be moving towards that, I'm like, the intensity that will allow you to take the load is when you walk off the bag. It's when you walk off the pads. It's after you threw your combo and how you gather yourself in fatigue in your round.
There's
at all moments.
There was a woman at the fights yesterday. She was doing the English language announcement for everything. She never used the wrong word. Like, her vocabulary was actually really good. Her pronunciation was fine. Like, I would say that she's just in the words she was using and what she was saying pretty close to fluent in English. But she had this constant between things that made her really hard to understand. Like, could not follow. It's like that. Your kick is fine, But you have all these ers and ums and like weird shit in between that you're like, I can't understand you. Like, what are you?
Yeah, there's a instinct, because we're so mechanistically motivated and our thought patterns are about the mechanics of things, that we think we're training the kick while we're kicking, and now is a timeout. We're not training anymore. Now we're resetting, and now we're going to train again the kick.
Yeah.
And it's like on, off, on,
Yeah.
off, on, off. And what Dieselnoi is like, there is no off at all.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't know, the thing that really, the Gary Vee descriptions is like, that article was kind of more about, well, when the intensity drops, then you got to drop the load. The Thai, the golden age Thai way is, when the intensity drops, you got to pick your intensity up.
Yeah.
You don't drop the load.
Yeah.
You bring your intensity up, and your intensity is your acuity towards your Ruup at all times. If you're at a point where you have to slump off of the pads and you're like really following the Ruup, the golden Ruup rule, then you're probably in a big danger zone.
Yeah.
Right? But if you slump off the pads all the time, there's no way to know where you are. And we're going to talk about this fight later, the incredible Dieselnoi Samart fight that was found. Like, it's arguably the greatest fight ever. Dieselnoi told us that he was devastated by his weight cut. 19 pounds in a few weeks. Oh, look at these dogs fucking going crazy on the road. Guys, that one's very funny. He said he was devastated by the weight cut and that he would have performed very differently if he didn't have to do this weight cut. Move over. These fighters are very different weight classes. Samart was 126 pound champion, and Dieselnoi was a 135 pound champion. But Samart didn't have to cut any weight for the fight probably, and Dieselnoi dropped 19 pounds. He was saying he was so like drained by this weight cut. But when you watch this fight, you're like, holy fuck, Dieselnoi looks so unbelievably vital.
Yes.
And he drains Samart. Like, it is incredible to see the physical impact he has on one of the most fluid fighters ever. And this is what the thing is this is Dieselnoi having a bad performance in his own mind about his Ruup. And it shows how hard he trained his Ruup. Like,
and how important it is.
How important it is. Yeah. This was him at his most depleted, and you cannot see, maybe some expert can see it, you cannot see a sign of its decay. It's really incredible. Like, it just shows you the kind of training he did. And then he brings that now to like Bank or somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, I'm still drawn to this idea of raising the intensity, which is really the focus. It almost has like a spiritual element to it. It's
interesting that you bring up VT's thing about the intensity and the load, because I wrote to Dieselnoi, he's at the gym now, and I was letting him know that we have 3 boys getting ready to fight in Bangkok, and just kind of, I'm not there, but please take care of them thing. And he said in Thai, he's like, I will give Bank as much as he can withstand. And that is totally that, like, we'll see what his load is at, right?
Well, he already knows that Bank can't really, maybe no Thai can really make the adjustment in Ruup. Like,
you guys have to understand there is a Dieselnoi level.
Yeah.
And nobody meets it.
My amp goes to 11.
Nobody meets it.
Yeah, but it's also the culture of the gym. I mean, Jim Bank's been raised in the gym of a certain standard.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like this way of the warrior is already gone. Like, you can get closer to it and move towards it, but it's very cool. It's like this spiritual dimension. It's like you're practicing a spiritual kind of like focus that under load, that is the whole point of being a fighter. And it's also amazing to me, it's like how you walk to get water might save you from injury.
Yeah.
Like, why would you fucking ever think that's true?
Yeah.
But it might, because of the crispness of your presence of mind in all things.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about this is a very big idea.
It's not what he said, it's how he said it.
I don't get that.
It's like, if you get your 50 kicks in, but you look like you're gonna fall apart doing it or something, like, one of the ways in which Dieselnoi loves Caro. Dieselnoi calls her Diesel-Lek.
Well, you have to say who Caro is.
Caro is this French woman who's come to the gym for long term. She's Muay Thai. She's built like Dieselnoi. She's just so intense. Like, just put your head down and do the work. In the way that Dieselnoi just has his own level, Caro just has her own level. It's just Caro. Like, Krunu doesn't love all of it. And it's like, that's Caro. You just gotta let it go. Because she
keeps a very high load, but she also keeps a lot of intensity.
Her intensity is the thing.
Yeah.
And Dieselnoi loves her. Dieselnoi calls her Diesel-Lek, which is an incredible honor to be called that by Dieselnoi. She's like Dieselnoi with elbows, but
oh, this is so beautiful. We're passing through jungle here.
One of the things that Krunu does not like or struggles with Caro is that when she's clinching or something, she'll throw elbows or like bring the intensity way up because she is having an intimate conversation with her training partner that is not perceivable necessarily on the outside, which is she can feel, she has a sensitivity for what that person's emotional range is. And so when she's working with men especially, she hates when they like try to dominate her, or if they start pouting or something, she will punish them for that. She's like, you want to fucking pout? I'm gonna teep your face. Like, she's very intense. That is the thing that has made Dieselnoi's level, is that he feels how he's affecting someone, and he will punish them for that.
Yeah.
He will not back off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very interesting, because that brings together how we usually talk about intensity. Like in English, the word has an emotional component, right? But it's also a sensitivity of awareness. The intensity is a kind of like acuity you have, a perception you have, that you're connecting to your training partner or your opponent in a way. And like you say, in the Muay Thai style, if you want to show weakness, I'm going to punish weakness.
Totally. Like, that is not acceptable.
Not acceptable. It's very interesting how she has that. And also Dieselnoi kind of has that in a certain regard too. Right.
So that's what allows Dieselnoi to have his personal pride and dignity of you never break your Ruup.
Yeah.
Is if he were to slump, the way he looks at someone else, he has this fantastic imitation thing he does when he's like, when you're clinching someone and they start to like worm or wiggle, he has like a rage inside of him at that weakness that makes him go harder. Caro has this, which is why he will never allow it for himself. So Dieselnoi, like Goggins, staring at his shoes for 10 minutes that we bring up in every episode.
It's true.
Dieselnoi must have, in his experience as a fighter, and he had no opposition for years, where he was training to the intensity of a champion, even though no one would fight him. He must have had so many moments in the gym where he wanted to quit, where he was like, not today, I'm gonna slump, whatever, and was like, fucking no, not me. Like, I do not do that. I will not tolerate that. And so he holds other people to that standard too, even when they don't meet it. One of my favorite things about having Dieselnoi in the gym that I was telling Caro as we were like bouncing on the tires, I'm like, Dieselnoi is one of the most generous persons I've ever met in my life, because he will tell someone who he knows will never listen to him the same thing 100 times. So many people, they're like, I told them twice and he's not going to listen to me, so I don't do it anymore.
It's a very Thai reaction.
I'm that way. I'm like, I told her and she didn't seem interested, so I'm not going to tell her again.
Totally.
I'm totally an asshole. Dieselnoi, with a smile and with the same enthusiasm, will tell someone to do something 100 times, knowing that they're never going to do it.
Yeah,
but he's like, bring your leg back.
Totally.
You can do it. It's amazing.
Oh, man. Okay, how far are we on this time-wise?
27.
Okay, let's
Change the battery.
Let's stop it and change the battery and go to another branch of this that I have in mind.
Okay.
We rolling? Okay. You don't even know where I'm going with this, but I'm very interested in what you think about this. Which this dovetails into another interesting aspect or dimension of Thai Muay Thai culture. We've long had this inclination that Thais have a very different perspective towards the ends of their careers. We noted that top Thai female fighters very often, it feels like once they get to kind of like elite status, they stop fighting often, they stop training very hard. They basically, it feels to us like they kind of want to stop fighting.
Yeah.
And you also get this when you see like the big names who continue to fight, like on Thai Fight, and the Sutsakorn, Sanchai. They continue fighting, they continue to make money, but very famously, they don't train very hard.
They don't fight top.
Yeah, they don't.
opposition.
You don't fight top fighters, but they become ambassadors to the sport. I'm wondering if this dimension of Ruup training, I always thought this was like a function of, oh, these people have been fighting. They've been fighting since they were 6 years old or 9 years old or 11, like whenever they started. They've been doing this for a very long time. By the time they're 25, they're more than a decade into fighting. And it's like, this is just the natural evolution of a career, right? A narrative arc. But I'm in reading about and thinking about Ruup and load versus intensity, right? Management. I feel like there's something also within the culture that is like, because Ruup is important, I feel like once they have the Muay down, their load goes down. They're no longer pushing the load and pushing the intensity.
Right.
And maybe this is just now and not how it used to be. But towards the ends of careers, because Ruup is so important, they bring the load down and they keep the intensity, the Ruup, together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're fighters of Ruup. What do you think about that idea? Like, it's why the top, some of the top fighters that are kind of like past their prime, maybe not physically, but in terms of their arc, don't train very much and are still beautiful fighters.
I think there are fighters who try to take that career arc, who their Ruup doesn't look good anymore when they're fighting, and so they're
who?
like, that person should not fight anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Ties?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Just like, it's not like talked about in this big way, but in the same way that we will hear Thais be like, oh, Sumadai, like they can't fight because of this, that, and the other thing. If someone has a Ruup broken performance, the kind of cast off will be like, they can't fight anymore, like they're too old. Or
yeah,
like
but that might be that they're just not training hard, and their fatigue catches you and breaks your Ruup. I'm just like, I don't know. I just feel like this is the shadow of focusing so much on Ruup. Is that as your career unfolds and your opportunities become less frequent and you're going more for paydays or defining fights or whatever it is, your load might come down.
Yeah.
Instead of Dieselnoi, your intensity has to come up. And I feel like, I don't know, you seem like you don't really, there is this weird thing in Thai fighters that feels like their aim is really to stop fighting.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't get good enough that no one can fight you and then retire.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels is like, and then this is what's fucking interesting. It's like we see this with top female fighters struggle with this kind of like endish part of their career when they start claiming no one can beat them, right? Or something like that. Their opportunities are very thin. When they then get absorbed into a Western style situation, they can really blossom or change. Instead of the load coming down in this kind of like soft management of your Ruup, because Ruup is so important, they get into more Western influenced stimulations of training, and their Ruup can now meet new load managements. Like I'm thinking about Stamp, who is at Fairtex and had like a whole second career with her one championship performance
and became a much better fighter through training at Fairtex.
Much better fighter.
I'm sure they increased her load and her intensity.
Yeah, and she no doubt trained hard as a pure Thai fighter, but I'm sure she was doing things that lifting weights, things that she might not have been doing in the same way, having Western protocols, because Fairtex has a kind of like pro-Western style. She's learning MMA. Also, I don't know if she's a better fighter than she used to be, but Loma she'd gotten to the point, no one can fight me kind of thing. And then she moved on to MMA. Amp, another fighter, not Stamp, but Amp. I'm wondering if instead of like softening the load and maintaining the Ruup and like basically, I don't know, I wonder if is that when you encounter a Western protocol at 23 or 20, this could be a really good thing because you've already got the Ruup management.
Yeah, that's the thing though, is that like you get a lot of Westerners in Thai gyms who have the Western protocol. Their body's really good. They have this like sports science-y, like doing your sprints and your sit-ups and like all the things that you do in order to like maximize your whatever. But there's no Ruup. Like there's no composure or balance to like put it on. It's very strange, the like absence of that Ruup from a...
Totally, but I'm saying these older fighters, and they're not old at all, struggle with load.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's like, I don't have to do that anymore. Or you even get it with Sao Sing, who she had a child, which among Thais often can be like, well, you'll never be the same. Like, and she probably believes it too because she's been told it physically instead of endurance and strength. She used to train a lot at Daejerat Gym, which is one of the most hardcore gyms in Thailand, with Arjun Sarat, who's extremely hardcore. She no longer trains there, and she has her own gym north of Bangkok, in Singbury, winter gym that she and her husband run, and it feels like she's exploring this. She is maybe the best female Thai fighter in Thailand, but is not quite sure what the load she's under in her training. Like how intensely, not intensely in terms of Ruup, I've been talking, but just the load of physical work to build that strength is. And she has publicly lectured Thai female fighters for not training hard, that Westerners train hard, right? Why are you laughing?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There's a promotion now that's somewhat new that has actually focused quite a bit on including female fighters on it, which is great. But it's a non-traditional format. It's 3-round fights, very like busy. They want a lot of action, like kind of clashy style.
And they love say doing what promotion it is.
They love doing Thai versus non-Thai matchups,
as everyone does.
And the Thais have been losing.
Okay, stop. It is called hardcore. What?
Muay hardcore and Super Champ. Same promoter. 2 different nights.
Slightly different styles and rule sets.
One has MMA gloves, the other one has Muay Thai gloves.
Okay.
But they like the same thing. They like this like max Muay Thai, like go thing. And the non-Thai fighters train very hard. Their loads are good. They're fit. They can make it through a 3-round fight with like kind of non-stop going forward action without a lot of Ruup going on, but like totally fitness-wise going hard.
Yeah.
They also often have a size advantage. And so the Thai women who are being put on this show were losing a lot and looking gassed very quickly. This is not their format. This is not their way of they've been fighting for years and years, but not like this.
Right.
And so it's a difficult thing to jump into if you're not used to. And so Sao Sing, who's kind of a headhunter for and kind of the poster girl,
face of the promotion in some ways.
And she's amazing. Yeah. She and her mom, who runs Sorsopit Gym, which is the gym that Sao Sing grew up in, were kind of chastising Thai female fighters for losing so much, because they're like, you have Muay Thai, this is your sport, you're all good, but you have no fitness. You're losing to Westerners because you're not fit. You have to train harder. You have to fight not just for the...
this is leaving aside the fact that the Thai is almost undersized every time. Not every time, but almost every time.
This is a huge thing.
Yeah, huge thing.
In a fight that's like clash, if you're the smaller one, it's not easy.
But it's notable that they were chastising Thai female fighters from a female fighter perspective for fitness, right?
And it is also true, they are not training super hard in their gyms for fitness. A lot of these girls probably don't run. A lot of them are not like they're hitting the weights.
Yeah, and this is this thing where they start to get to their peak and the load comes down, I think sometimes. And to not go too far into it, but Sao Sing then fought a Westerner. What's her name? You don't remember?
Suri. I think
Suri.
Megan is her Suri, Mouse.
Okay. A Westerner who she outweighed quite a bit, which is very unusual. Usually it's the Thai who's outweighed, and Sao Sing ended up gassing pretty good towards the end of that fight. And it just showed, this is the fucking ironic thing about fighting Thai female fighters that are really good. You are fighting one of the best fighters in the world, but their load is not like yours. Like, all of them, once they're past like side bet prime, just do not train the way they did when they were 14 years old. Do you agree with that kind of?
Yeah.
As a general thing?
I've heard this about myself. Many years ago, actually, it was Petang Gym. I'm smaller than my opponents a lot, which makes me think that I'm not scary. Like, that I'm like, what's the big deal about fighting me? I'm so much smaller. And the owner of Petang Gym was like, Sylvie's crazy. She fights hard all 5 rounds. Like, that the difficulty of facing that, or the intensity of facing that, is like not fun. It's like how Long Swan was not fun to fight because of his
right. I mean, part of this is also is there's a Thai style which also involves not really pushing it for 2 rounds.
Yeah, basically.
It's not like they're just
finding a way to fight only 1 or 2 rounds in a 5-round fight.
Actually, I'm not following the point.
Okay, go back to your point.
No. I wanted to understand it. How does that deal with Ruup and load management?
I don't have Ruup to the extent that these Thai women have Ruup a lot of the time. Mine's getting better, but especially when this was said about me years and years and years ago, I'm like, I'm not scary. Like, I don't have a lot of skills or finesse or whatever. The thing that I talked to Emma about we used to have a podcast called Two Ladies in the Kingdom. And one of the things we talked about is that in Thailand, facing Thai, like, why are Thai women hard to fight? There's so many ways to lose that we don't even, like, we can't even see the whole picture. There's so many ways to lose that in a more simplified, just clash as hard as you can, it's like who gasses first, who hits harder, who touched the other person more kind of thing, is like that's who wins or loses. In like a Ruup points, skill, overall picture game, there are lots of ways to lose. So I wasn't even identifying that what made me hard to fight and what makes me hard to fight is that my load capacity is beyond the load capacity of my opponent.
And this is the thing. All you need to do is bring your intensity up Dieselnoi level.
Yeah.
Because your load is high already.
Yeah.
And you do train Ruup pretty good. Like, you've adopted a lot of Thai mentality towards showing fatigue or not. But it's like, because your load is so high, you have the chance to raise your Ruup threshold, your intensity to meet it. Like
Right,
how you go and get water, how you come off the bag, like all of those things, right?
Yes. I mean, why we're talking about this is because of this revelation about what my leg actually means, is that my Ruup has gotten much better over the years because of the influence and confluence of being in a Thai gym. Now with these revelations, being able to intentionally train Ruup is like skyrocket capacity. But in my last training session, this one where Cruden was like, you have no power.
1 second, I have it got knocked off. Okay. I hit that styrofoam thing and it stuck to the ground.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's off now.
There's like a lid on the road that Kevin hit. What am I saying?
You're saying you can intentionally train Ruup. When you hear Maimi Lang now, you're like, oh, that's what I need to focus on.
Yeah, but there's even like a lack of, I'm even aware of Ruup. I know what Ruup is, and there's still like blind spots all over the place for me. And we say this all the time in this podcast, is you are training something, even if you're not intentionally training it. You are rehearsing and practicing habits all the time, even if you're not aware of them. So be careful to pick what you're working on. Is in my last training session, the one where Cruden was like Maimi Lang or whatever, I was trying to like push for my chance to spar. And you were like, you know what? And Kevin is all about me sparring. Kevin was like, not today. You kind of have a shitty attitude. And it was like, your Ruup is just gonna go in the we're practicing shitty Ruup direction instead of like, you're gonna like take this difficult opportunity to work on Ruup. And it was like, don't worry about it. Like, not today.
Speaking about this Ruup training, purpose of Ruup, I'm always like, baby, you just need way more sparring rounds. If you just worked on Ning, which we've talked about in the past, which is just practicing not being affected, like not showing anything is affecting you. If you just sparred and were like, I'm just not going to be affected no matter what lands on me, shrug it off, laugh, whatever it is, that's fucking great training.
Yeah.
Because one, you're learning Ruup, you're learning how to hold yourself in composure when things score, which is really important in Thailand. If your Ruup breaks, your emotional composure breaks when something scores, it just became 3 times more valuable on the scorecard. So you need to learn how to get scored on and have it be like, whatever. And then the other thing is, if you can just pay attention to like Ning, like not being affected emotionally by things, that means your eyes can start watching strikes.
Yeah.
Like, let your supercomputer predator-prey brain absorb the visual information of how strikes come out of bodies and how they move through space and the little tells that show that a strike is coming. Like, all these little things, your eyes need to absorb more of that. Don't worry about scoring. Like, don't worry about how do I get past this guard and where's the opening and hunting for holes. I feel like the emphasis on strikes is just way too big, even in sparring. And I feel like one could spar and just train Ruup and your eyes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know, it's very cool. It's still, we're still going, right? It's still a very sad thing to me that you have the best female fighters in the world, and I guarantee you they are in Thailand. Man, there was that beautiful fight when Joanna Jacek fought Dunapa, who did have a little bit of weight advantage, but just fucking like out-rooped her to death. I'm like, these are the best female fighters in the world, but their load is way down.
Yeah.
And part of it comes from, I think, this like focus on Ruup, that as long as my Ruup is being maintained in most conditions, and so they bring the load down. And I'm like, what's missing is that golden age value is really high load, really high Ruup intensity, like through all things. And I'm like, it's a shame that there is a population of the best female fighters in the world, but you know what? Their load isn't where it was when they were earning those skills. It's just sad to me. Like, it's not, I don't know, maybe sad's the wrong word, but like it feels like a vast waste of potential. So things like Sao Sing pushing for more conditioning for herself and others, urging other Thai female fighters for better conditioning, that's a great sign. And now after that last fight, she'll probably push herself even harder. I mean, she has the experience of being pushed very hard at Deshrat. Or Stamp going through fucking Western style or more Western accommodating programs at Fairtex. Or Loma, I don't know what she's doing at Tiger, but I'm sure there's like a lot of Western integration. That's kind of interesting coming late in the careers of these women that already have unbelievable levels of Muay, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, it's kind of cool. Any thoughts on that, or you're all good on that?
I'm good on that one.
Okay. Moving on. I'm sorry, guys. That was a fucking long-ass section of a podcast on Ruup and Mimey Lang.
Turns out these are real conversations.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Okay, this is a segment that we're trying to do every Muay Thai Bones if possible. We're just making it up. It's in past segments we've talked about Ning, and then what was endurance?
Aton, which is
Aton.
is to endure but not endurance.
Okay, to endure. So we're trying to we're looking for Buddhistic principles of Buddhist practice that are reflected in or expressed in Muay Thai, Thailand's Muay Thai. Like
integrated values.
And we like to a lot of people like to extract the techniques of Muay Thai and apply them to MMA or kickboxing or whatnot. And this is about the opposite. This is about thinking about the ways in which Muay Thai embodies Buddhistic values and principles. And so in a way, if you're a practicing Buddhist, you might find yourself coming closer to understanding the Muay Thai of Thailand. That could be one result, right?
It also helps explain why Muay Thai aesthetic in Thailand is the way it is. Like why the values of the culture look for those values in scoring a fight or who performed better.
Yeah, and if you pursue these values in your Muay, you might unconsciously find yourself practicing towards values that Buddhism shares. Sylvie is a Buddhist. I'm not Buddhist, but I find it a really interesting philosophy. So just for the understanding, like Sylvie is actually practicing Buddhism intentionally to go along with her Muay. So she knows a lot more about this than I do. Today's topic or principle that we're talking about is Metta, right? Mm-hmm. And Metta is what? Compassion, loving kindness.
It's often translated to loving kindness, but a simple translation is compassion.
Okay. Now, I want to start this with you showing your Sakyan to the camera, like put it up in there so people can see it. So if we'll put a picture of this on the patron post if you're listening as a patron on Apple or Android. This is a really interesting thing, and we don't even know if this is true. But for those, can you describe what your sakyant kind of looks like?
It's basically if you had a bow with 3 arrows shooting. And so it is it's a weapon, and it's got these 3 arrows.
It might be like Vishnu's bow, or perhaps he's associated with the bow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know where we got this information. It was maybe a Western expert in sakyant, Ricky, and he was way into like looking at details of Sylvie's sakyant that she got from Arjan P. Kating, and I think there's this thing where you don't really share photographs of these sakyant because they're kind of like full of secrets. Like every Arjan has his own kind of like touch or turn, the way he particularly imbues a particular pattern.
Yeah, it's his own dhamma.
His own
work.
Yeah, so looking closely at a photograph of a sakyant of a particular Arjan can be like really interesting to somebody who studies sakyant. And what Ricky said was that Arjan P had altered the usual sakyant in this case, in Sylvie's case, to have the arrows shooting metta. And part of that, from what I understood what he was saying, was it's kind of black magic-y in a certain regard to be like shooting arrows at somebody.
On your fist.
On your fist. Yeah. It'd be like wishing ill on someone, right?
Yes.
And this ties into, which we're not going to get into, but one day we have to do is like, why is violence in Muay Thai Buddhistic, right? Mm-hmm. It touches on these things. I don't know, I feel like, am I losing you on this, baby?
No, I have something that I'm going to say, but you say your thing first.
Oh, good. You're saving up. So what he said was, what Arjan P, I think he said, oh, that's really interesting, that Arjan P altered the yant to make it shooting compassion or loving kindness on your fist towards your opponent. Arjan P knows she's a Muay Thai fighter, okay? In order to not make it a destructive yant, right? You're not willing destruction on somebody. So I guess what we're going to be talking about is, what does it mean to be fighting with metta? Or to be shooting metta at somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, now go ahead.
When I got my elbow done, my first elbow yant was my first yant ever. And Ajahn P, I didn't speak Thai super well at the time. He does not speak English, but this was communicated very clearly. He said, you can never strike a child, like spank a kid or whatever the thing is, with your right hand because you have this elbow yant. The power of yant is very real. If you believe this, if you practice this, if you go into this. And so it was like on
your elbow is a Vishnu disc, a disc of Vishnu. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically I've imbued so much power in my hand that there is now this limitation of don't use that wrong. Like don't hurt someone with that. So the reason he would change the yant is because I fucking hit people with my fist. So if I'm hitting people with my fist with the original yant, you can be damaging people in a way that is not appropriate in the world. Like
That's
it would
the
be
thought.
doing black magic. Like it would be using it for nefarious purposes.
Yes.
So to change it to metta, so that I'm still punching someone in the face, but I'm punching someone in the face with metta, what this yant does through the process of like slamming people with it is it breaks down their walls that are in the way of their path of Buddhism.
Well, that's how you
Which is
think
very
about it.
internal.
That's how he wasn't thinking about this.
No, but it's very
this is
internal.
how you think about it.
To yourself. So I have these walls. I'm blasting through the walls with my fist, with my faith, with my learning.
I don't even understand. These walls are not clear.
They're internal and external. They're internal to each person. So I am constantly trying to break these walls down in the process of being a Buddhist. And by shooting Metta with my fist, I am helping other people break down their walls.
Okay. A wall is too abstract I mean, everybody understands what a wall is. It's a barrier. But I've never heard you describe this, so I want some details. What is the nature of one's internal wall?
It's basically ignorance is what that wall is. It's the things that you don't know, like you can't know, and so you do things wrong out of ignorance, or you fail to see things the way they are out of ignorance, or you cannot walk the path. You keep falling off the path or going the wrong way on the path. You're not staying in the middle.
Because Buddhism or some parts of Buddhism has a concept that if you simply tasted the truth, you would know the truth, you'd lose ignorance.
Yes.
Right.
Buddhism is the gradual process of losing ignorance.
Okay, so the walls that are being broken are basically the chains of ignorance, the barrier of ignorance.
Right, which shape how you walk your path or block you from walking the middle path.
Okay, so is this something that you've thought about a lot? Or just since we started talking about Metta and your Sakyan?
I haven't really thought about slamming people with Metta, even though it's on my fist. I haven't really thought about that. But this idea of compassion and loving kindness in Muay Thai, like with your opponent, is something that I think a lot of Westerners kind of see and don't see in Muay Thai. Like, they have this whole, like, it's all about respect, you know, fight each other and then love each other afterwards as a, like, concept. But I think that for many Thais, not for all Thais, I think there are a lot of Thais who do not actually think this way, even if this is what sportsmanship is in a general sense. There is a true degree of gratitude and respect to your opponent.
Are you talking about who believes this? Is it prevalent in the culture? You feel like Krunu believes this? I'm kind of confused. You're saying ideally or hopefully?
Ideally.
Okay.
And I think that in communities where there is actually a lot of true earning in Muay Thai, where, like, you don't make money if you don't fight. The kids in my gym are mostly middle class, so it's less that way.
Thai kids.
They get to keep their money most of the time. Some of them give it to their parents, and so it's got a little bit of the, like, underclass roots to it. But in communities where, like, the entire village pools together money for the Dermpan,
I see what you mean.
or
yeah.
like you actually are earning fucking 500 baht on a fight for your family kind of thing. If you don't have an opponent, you don't fight. So there's a, like, gratitude towards that opportunity.
But you're kind of making this up. Like, we don't know that. You're assuming there is.
I'm saying I feel this.
You imagine. You feel it. Okay.
I feel this.
Okay, you feel it. Okay.
And that is a kind of meta that doesn't, to my understanding, and I don't fight in the West, I don't fucking see it. I don't see people in the West showing gratitude for their opponent. Like, it's mostly, this person won't fight me, that person pulled out, this, like, all this, like, complaining about how their opponent was too brawly or too whatever. There's not a lot of gratitude to someone else having trained hard and worked hard and coming into the ring to have this experience.
I've seen
with
some
you.
expressions of it, but it's not a dominant
It's rare.
feeling. Well, I've seen some.
Yeah.
Like, Caitlin Young expresses a lot of gratitude towards
That's
her
true.
opponents.
I would also say that Sarah McCann,
Yeah.
when she loses a fight, she's like, thank you so much to my opponent for fighting
Yeah.
so hard.
But both fighters have come in contact with a lot of Asian culture.
Yes.
So. But to point taken, right? This gratitude towards the opponent.
But the reason this is Buddhist is not just because Metta is a Buddhist concept, but in being Buddhist, you are trying to release yourself from the cycle of suffering, which is existence or consciousness. Consciousness is suffering. And so you're trying to release yourself from this chain. But in the process, you are also constantly having loving kindness that everyone will escape suffering. So when you are trying to improve yourself as a fighter, or you're trying to get somewhere in your Muay or whatever this thing is, the loving kindness is wishing that same process, that same release, that same improvement for everyone else.
And this goes to, well, so that's a larger concept of compassion, but there's also a more particular thing about Muay Thai, which is very not Western, which is Thai scoring. And this, you need to understand the concept of Ruup, which we went on for about an hour and a half. It's really important to understanding this aspect of what it would mean to fight with Metta, which is, I think, and we don't know this for sure, this is just our impression, we've been here 7.5 years. Ideally in a fight, you want to put pressure on your opponent so that the truth of your opponent is revealed. Basically, you find the weaknesses of your opponent, and ideally, you break them, you make them crumble on their own flaws.
They reveal their own, it's like the fight is yours to lose, kind of. Like they reveal their own failures.
The right phrase.
In 800 meters, go left.
Okay, but I don't think the fight is yours to lose. That means something else. I think it's more, I don't know. In the West, the star, like when you're dominating, you are the one imposing this force, right? This kind of like almost like the quintessential modern version of it, maybe like Mike Tyson, the wrecking ball. Like you almost don't even remember his opponents other than them just being like flattened. Right. Especially in his, like, when he was in his peak form. He's just this wrecking force, right? There's a yang element of it. There's something about, there is a Thai ideal, and I'm sure there's elements of that also in Muay Thai as well, but there's an element of Muay Thai that is really about showing the collapse of your opponent. Like, revealing their flaws. It's like you found a building that was built and you like find where the foundation is cracked and you just put a little pressure to make the whole thing collapse. So you kind of, I feel like maybe I lost you.
This is maybe a grotesque example.
Let's go for it.
But it is very wrong in Buddhism to kill anything. And yet Thai Buddhists will poison dogs. And the loophole of this is it was the dog's decision to eat the poison. I just put it out.
Yeah.
Is like, it was my opponent's decision to fall apart like that. I just put the possibility there or something. But I think
it's a weird analogy, but I kind of understand what you're saying.
I don't know if it's a good one or not. It just came to mind. But that's why maybe I'm getting beyond the point already, but like...
Oh, it's okay, baby. We're just having a conversation.
It's not about this like overkill, I destroyed you aggression, like someone getting their ass completely kicked. Which is why a fighter can... I've done enough in the fifth round and go backwards.
When people are like, why are you not fighting to the death, as Nam Kaboon would describe it, is like once your opponent has crumbled, there's nothing left for one to do. It's like now you don't stomp on the crumbled pile.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't spit on the ashes.
This aesthetic, and this is gamed. There's gamemanship around this, where you like pretend your opponent has crumbled when they really haven't crumbled. Like you like create the illusion of them crumbling when they were actually quite strong the whole time.
Right.
And there's a lot of gamesmanship, and it's not all like elite, high valued Buddhism. But there's a value beneath the scoring that has to do with this, like you were saying, like you just kind of like reveal the flaws of your opponent almost compassionately in a weird way. Like, I don't know, there's a very I don't know if what the moment was really like, but there's a very famous photograph of Samart and Nampan.
Yeah, covered in blood. Nampan was just like
covered in blood. And Samart,
he's got his arm around him
like brothers. And there's just like this unity of these two. And Nampan was famous as a Muay Thai fighter, just like relentless, powerful, strong, I think an underappreciated fighter. And Samart is just like the fucking matador, like he's so slick and everything. And you almost get a moment of compassion out of that photograph, where it's like your flaw has been revealed.
Yeah.
Like Samart is like, all I did was reveal your flaw, and he's covered with blood. I think he even got a nickname out of that fight.
It's Tiger with the soft face.
Tiger with the soft face versus the tiger with the jade face.
It's his brother, yeah.
What?
His brother is the tiger with the jade face.
No, Samart is the jade face tiger.
Oh my God, you're right. His opponent, yeah.
His opponent is the jade face tiger, and Nampan became the tiger with the soft face. And so there was this thing, you get that in that photo, and I don't know the real story of it, but you get that feeling of compassion. This is what we're talking about, is where all that Samart did was reveal the flaws of Nampan's style. And this is something that, like, in the classic femur versus Muay Thai setup, this is how it kind of plays out in my mind, where you have the femur fighter is like, I'm just going to reveal that you are a low IQ, power only, marching forward bull, right? And so I'm just going to dance away from you all the time, and you're going to look like an idiot. You had this beautiful moment with Karahat and Samson when they were training, when they came to the gym together, and Karahat kept making these jokes like if he fought Samson, they were together. They're like two Golden Age legends, and Karahat's a femur fighter. How he'd just be like, oops, you just fell down. You just tripped again. Why do you keep falling? Like he basically was pantomiming that he would basically trip.
Be like a bull, yeah.
Like he'd be like a matador.
Yeah.
But that would be the femur fighter revealing the flaw in the Muay Thai fighter.
Whereas and then the Muay Thai fighter reveals that the femur fighter is a paper tiger that's just kind of
like dancing away, but then suddenly you're just performing. This isn't real. And you actually got that in this Dieselnoi and Samart fight. It was like surreal to see, even though there was a in the ring weight difference, to see Dieselnoi just like strip away so much of the magic of Samart, like who is kind of untouchable. And you see the opposite, like the same kind of thing, is that fight was really about exposing the flaw of Samart's style.
And it is worth mentioning that this shared value of compassion or metta in Buddhism, Thai culture, and traditional Muay Thai, this is not in these like 3-round clashy new form
the
Muay Thai
hybrid, hybrid fights at all, for sure.
Ajahn Surat, who is like top trainer in Thailand, like one of the most feared men, he's very old school, he's very gruff, he just wants like heart and hard fighters. He does not like these 3-round formats, and he was talking shit about them, and it was really beautiful. He actually said it in English. He said, "This is not a gentleman's sport."
Wait, what is not?
The 3-round clashing, like not traditional Muay Thai. And he's talking about the arc of the fight. He's like, there's no skill, there's no arc in the fight. And he said that this was not a gentleman's art. And to me, that thought or that expression is one has metta and one doesn't. That's not the only difference. But a gentleman's sport has this compassion, it has this sportsmanship that's like, you reveal yourself or whatever. And there's a kind of, in Buddhism, this don't worry so much about people who are bad, people who sin, people who do this or that. That's not your problem. Karma comes to everybody. They're dealing with their karma. That's why they are the way they are. You're dealing with your karma. That's the way you are. Is that like, if someone has a weakness in a fight and you're exposing it, you're like, that's your karma. Like, that's your weakness. That's your problem.
Yeah.
I'm just doing what I do.
It's very interesting, though, because then fighting, and we're moving down a line of thought, and this is not definitive of what really is the case in Thailand, but these are like values that we recognize in both areas, is that fighting becomes a truth process.
Yeah.
Like, proving what's true. And it's like, I think that's the satisfaction maybe in the traditional Thai style thing, that when a Yod Moi defeats somebody and then like reveals them to be limited in some way, there's something satisfying in seeing, it's like you're seeing the truth.
Yeah.
Instead of, and there's so much bullshit in the fight game, like, to say it's the truth game is kind of weird in a certain regard. And there's so much performance and like feigning stuff, but it's almost like, yeah, you feign Ruup, you train Ruup, but then really this is why the Ruup is so important in the Thai concept, is that when you're fighting your opponent in a more traditional Thai setup, you're breaking their Ruup. Like, when you break their Ruup, you show what they are.
Yeah.
You show their flaw, which is why training Ruup is so important.
Yeah.
Right? It's very... You were making an analogy about that fight with the Ukrainian guy. When we pre-talked about this a little bit.
I made an analogy.
Well, you were making an example. How that guy was being conditioned by those kicks.
Oh.
You don't remember that?
I do. I thought I was talking about Ning when we were talking about that, but
Okay, maybe we can stop on this if you want, baby.
well, we watched this fight last night that was a Estonian guy against a Thai guy, and the Thai guy was southpaw, and the Estonian guy had this really nice right cross, but every time he threw it, the Thai guy would just slam him with this fucking intensely hard left kick, and he basically was just conditioning this Estonian guy to associate, every time I throw my favorite weapon, I'm gonna get kicked. And all the Estonian guy had to do was throw two. Like, all he had to do was just add something on top of it and be like, still my favorite. But he wasn't. Instead, he was just building this, his weakness and his fear was just getting amplified every second, and his own corner was just getting so frustrated with him. They're like, oh, he's just scared, like he keeps backing out.
It was a very interesting fight, because you had the Thai style was essentially just revealing the limits of the Westerner fighting.
Yes.
Like
almost nothing more than that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you added up all the points that landed, there were 1 million kicks landing. But it really wasn't about what points were landing or the damage that was occurring. It was like watching someone condition or train behavior in themselves.
Well, why does that make you associate it with Metta?
Because it's this revealing of the truth. Like, and the truth is, everyone has flaws. Every style has flaws. What you're really doing is trying to overcome your flaws in the fight and not have them be exposed. But it's like, it's not like, oh, I beat you, I have no flaws, you have flaws. But it's kind of like a truth-telling game.
Yeah.
Where you both are kind of lying.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the Thai guy was one of these like heavier dudes who actually really love watching fight. They have these amazing performance styles when they're like kind of pudgy.
Yeah.
That guy is not going to have great endurance. Like, you know, he's not going to have great endurance, but it never was revealed. It never became a problem
revealed.
because the Estonian guy didn't know how to push in a way that would reveal
and
itself.
And
we all knew. Everyone knew.
Well, the Estonian guy was looking on delivering damage, and Fairless, it was a knockout or nothing fight, and the Thai guy wasn't trying to really knock him out. He tried a couple times, but it's like the Estonian guy, if he thought about it, he could have been like,
Whoa.
yeah, he could have been like, the flaw of my opponent is probably his cardio.
Yeah.
So what I need to do is push his cardio.
Yeah.
Like, I need to start teeping him. I need to start staying on him. When he circles out away from the ropes, stay on him because I'm better conditioned. And when his cardio starts to weaken, his Ruup will start to break.
Yes.
And then his flaw will show itself.
Right.
This is a very fucking different thing than the Western thing, which is just, how do I put damage on somebody? Whereas in the Thai concept, yeah, putting damage on somebody is one way to break the Ruup, but there's many ways to break your Ruup. And that's why in Thailand, which is, you brought this up and I cut you off a little bit, when you're in the lead, going backwards is something one can do because you've already assumed dominance and now you're basically making your opponent look like they're desperate and chasing you.
Yeah.
Which is another flaw in themselves, right?
Yeah. Or if you're a Dern fighter, you keep going forward and let them just drown.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
You don't have to dance back and be like, okay, this is done. You can also have the like Lam Namoon, Long Swan thing of continuing to come forward and just let a performance femur fighter just sink and like drown.
Well, this is one of the great things that you encounter in your fights because you fight a lot of backwards fighting female Thai fighters who don't have great cardio often, right?
Yeah.
They're just maintaining their Ruup. While you're chasing them down, there's like this battle. It's a theatrical battle. They're trying to make it look like you're desperately chasing them. You're trying to make it look like they're running from you.
Right.
And there's a very
Both are
fine
true.
line.
Both are
There's a
true.
very fine line of performance where you don't want to be on the wrong side of the line.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Uh-oh.
Rolling. Probably my door. I suck at closing. Okay.
The great door. Are we rolling?
Rolling.
Okay. Whew, this is such an epic podcast. It's crazy that we do this. Like each topic could be its own podcast. Okay, this time we're talking about something that nobody, I don't even know on the planet who knows what this is about other than Sylvie.
You do.
I'm a pretty close observer. This is about the true meaning of fight rate. Oh, baby.
I got coffee on my nice new white shirt.
Oh, that's too bad. Do you want to pull over and fix it?
No.
Sorry, guys. So, we had the rare occasion, like Sylvie's been fighting at this insane fight rate for 7.5 years in Thailand. She was averaging maybe 35 fights a year.
For the first 3.
More than that.
Really?
Yeah. For about 5 years. Is there a leak there, baby?
Yeah.
Oh, here, I got an extra cup. Just put it right here in the... Here. Just pop it right in there.
Thank you. Okay.
We had a coffee emergency.
Coffee emergency.
All right.
The real life.
So for about 5 years, maybe more, really, you were over 30 fights. And then we set aim on the 30 fights a year. And then we set aim on the 471 professional documented fights, the world record owned by
Len Whitmore.
Len Whitmore, boxer from the 1940s. And we planned out, well, it's going to take 10 years. Maybe we'll be shooting for like 25 fights, like bring the fight rate down a little bit. And really the only reason to bring it down, it's hard to find fights. Like Sylvie's become incredibly well known in the country of Thailand, and especially in areas she fights a lot in, like Chiang Mai. She takes huge weight discrepancies in order to find fights, but we just actually this in December was the first time in I can't even remember since there was a sustained injury maybe a couple years ago that you did not fight at least twice in the month. We fought only one time. We scrapped and scrapped and scrapped for this second fight. We really want at least 2 fights a month, and you only fought one time. Just we're
Yesterday.
driving back from it, right?
Yesterday, yeah.
And what's interesting about the one fight this month and the fact that we had to scramble so much and we came up dry was, for me, I just got hit. I told you, we were talking about this the other day briefly. It just feels like without the fights, everything else we're doing kind of feels meaningless. Not the Muay Thai library, which has its own historical meaning, and the community of people behind it, but all the training, all the Yodmoy reaching, all the culture changing, all the opportunity making for others, I don't know, it feels meaningless. Like if suddenly you were fighting 6 times a year or even 12 times a year, it would feel fucked up. And you kind of were like, I know what you're talking about, Kevin.
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's meaningless, but it has less meaning, for sure.
Yeah, but then that just becomes like a meaningless phrase. Because, what is it, like 1% less meaning?
No, it just...
Like, it's like saying nothing. Like, you have to be more crystal
I think
in
that
what you're
the
saying.
content that we produce is not...
Yeah, it's aside from the content I said.
Then what's meaningless? Being in Thailand and training?
The whole, like, I don't know. I thought I summed it up pretty
There
well.
was when we came here and moved to Lana early, like first 2 years we were here, probably the first year we were here, there was a guy who came and had a blog who was gonna like live the life of a Nakmoy, and Kevin and I were amazed because he never fought.
I don't think he fought, yeah.
And so it was like, what exactly is living the life of a Nakmoy?
A Nakmoy, by the way, in Thailand is a Muay Thai fighter. Like in Thai.
Yeah.
Like some people don't know what Nakmoy means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was weird. It was
So
like,
he kind of like hung out with Thai Nakmoy, would go to the mall when they would go to the arcade. Like he did.
the peripheral.
He
things.
lived all the things of a Nakmoy, but he wasn't a fighter.
Right.
Trained hard, right? Probably.
So that to me is pretty devoid of the meaning of being a fighter. So I can see what you mean by like without the fights, it's just not. It's like you're
Yeah, but it's
playing
not.
a
It's
part.
not the fights. It's all the fights. It's
the fight rate.
3 fights a month, basically. Like we schedule 3 a month
Because
minimum,
one might
because
fall out.
one could fall out.
Or you might have a kind of dry month like this month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's a little worrisome that we finally hit. We finally hit a 1 fight month. We've not had that in a very long time, and during the previous year, we've had 3 fight months on purpose to bank fights, in fear of there being a 1 fight month.
Right.
But it kind of freaked me out that there was a 1 fight month.
Yeah.
Like, basically, we were told that the Thai female fighters of Chiang Mai don't want to fight you anymore.
Yeah.
And some of them are really big,
Yeah.
like physically way bigger than you.
Yeah.
And they fought many times, and it's just there is a kind of understanding, like why?
Yeah.
Because you're just so strong in the clinch. You're hard to fight. And there might be other political involvements. Like it's very hard to read the entire situation. We're actually trying to get back to Chiang Mai to talk to some people there to find out what's really kind of going on, but it may be that simple. But this is the thing. It's like that fight rate, that 3 fights a month, for me, it makes everything, it's back to that Muay Thai as truth telling. Yeah, you can do awesome things on the pads and learn all this technique and work hard and get in amazing condition. If you're not fighting, there's something seriously missing. I don't want to denigrate people who don't fight or don't fight a lot. I'm just saying this is our own experience of what you're doing, and literally no one on the planet is doing what you're doing, so we're not really putting other people in this framework.
We're actually really talking about me.
Only you, but our experience of it. But we want to talk about your experience, because
crazy thing.
Who else is going to talk about it?
Is that this dry month just happened. I mean, it didn't come out of nowhere. Like, we've been struggling and scrapping and, you know, able to kind of get out of this situation because fights were falling in my lap 3 days after the promoter told me or whatever. But because I'm me, I'm doing all the things that I normally would be doing, like not a lot other than the fights has changed. So we got to experience me without the fights.
Yeah.
And it's fucking weird. Like, it's...
I don't like it. Like, baby. So, I mean, no, we're not gonna, this is not really about finding fights, like, but the feeling is we are probably gonna have to start taking fights that we wouldn't otherwise take.
Yeah.
Like, Sylvie doesn't like fighting on 3-round
formats,
kickboxing type formats. It's not Muay Thai. It's Thai people don't see it as Muay Thai. It's not Muay Thai. This clashing thing. They don't allow clinch, but in almost any of them, I mean, it's just not the path that you're trying to produce. You might have to fight unfair situations, people setting up losses. Like, now Sylvie's got kind of a name, so people want to kind of like set up to fight their local girl. And
Kevin calls it name climbing.
Name climbing, do some name climbing. So far we haven't had to take those like non-ideal situations, and we're probably gonna have to start scrapping, like expand. That's why we just went to Phuket, and it was actually really positive. So maybe we'll start fighting out of Phuket. More, it's an area of Thailand where we purposefully have left it untouched, so that if we need to move into it, it's sitting there as a productive possibility.
It's like the gunslinger who gets to go try to have a new identity in an area that doesn't know him.
A little bit. But okay, so part of this is what I want to talk about here, about this fight rate thing, is fighters often, almost always, but often, sometimes not, I'm thinking about exceptions.
Okay.
Think about one fight or another that they'd like to have. Sylvie's had 259 fights. We do not, and nor have we really ever thought of a fight you'd like to have, because you're not defining yourself on winning or losing versus somebody.
Right.
The fighting itself is the process. Like, you're maybe the only fighter, certainly from the West, whose pedagogy is you've had a lot of training, a lot of education, but mostly your development as a fighter has been through fighting, like hundreds of fights now. And that's the process we have always wanted to stick to. And now we're aiming at 471 fights. Who knows what it's going to turn out as? No one has ever really done this before. We want to see what happens. Like, what is the slow cook process of 471 fights? So when we think of fighting, like taking a fight or a promotion, we're not thinking of one fight. We're thinking 5 fights, 10 fights. Like, if we go, one reason why we've not fought in Phuket or the islands is like, we don't want to take one fight. We don't want to enter a community, take one fight, and then depending on what happens in that fight, it could slam all the doors.
Yeah, there are a lot of one-off opportunities that you say no to because you're looking for the opportunity that gives you...
Which might be okay
more.
in themselves, but if that fight goes the wrong way, that might slam the door on 10 other fights that's behind it.
Yeah.
And it's like, so for that reason, we avoid one-off type fights, like showdown battles versus this or that. What we want is hard fights. We take fights that often with big disadvantages, but mostly because the fighting itself is the process.
Yeah.
At least that's how we've defined it, right? So, can you talk a little bit about that ethic? There have been a few Western female fighters that have taken up the fight rate idea. Like Maggie was fighting a fair amount in Chiang Mai. Lisa Beerley was fighting a fair amount in Chiang Mai. This Estonian, I think she's an Estonian girl.
Callista.
Not.
But Callista was fighting.
Yeah, Callista, but that's not the one I'm talking about. Maria in Chiang Mai. Like, nobody really fought like this before, but now women are fighting like this more. There's the old quantity versus quality, which is ridiculous. As we've said before, the people who are like quality over quantity are people that didn't have a lot of quantity available to them. So people would choose peak fights to define themselves, and they would fight 20 times or 30 times or so. We've taken this other path, which is the process of fighting itself repeatedly. Can you talk a little bit about like really high level repetitions of fighting? As some people
it's not an easy like, oh, I have this answer. The thing about fighting is that I really love fighting. I also really stress out and like have very strong emotional struggles with fighting, but that comes with anything that you really love. The thing about wanting to fight a lot or get back in the ring or like make it 3 a month, not 1 every 3 months in order for you to be able to train up to the 1 kind of thing, is that in the same that we've talked a lot about how so much can be packed into one training session, which is like 2 or 3 hours long, and it's like an entire like roadmap of different emotions and physical things going on and mental processes and all these things, is that those are all packed into fights too. And if you only have one and you put a lot of emphasis on it and it becomes this like defining thing, I think there's a fantasy about all of those things having that kind of importance. It doesn't mean that those things are not important, but they're not as significant as you think they are, because they will repeat themselves and they also will be buried or resurface or any of these other things, and you only understand that by doing it a lot.
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm not disparaging other approaches to fighting. Like, the majority of people who are well esteemed don't have a lot, like a shitload of fights. How can you really know what you're doing if you've only done it 20 times or 30 times or 40 times even? Like, if you're like, I was a damn good fighter, I fought 25 times, had 3 belts, whatever. Like, I only fought the best, whatever. Okay, cool. You were a great, wonderful fighter. Imagine if you had fought 100 times. You had those 25 fights, but you also had 75 other fights, which were varying degrees of skill, like of opponent. Some very, very difficult, some easier, like whatever, a span of opponents. Now you have the experience of those 25 more or less peak type fights, let's imagine, and the experience of 75 other fights. Think to yourself, well, what do you know about yourself after 100, or if you had fought 100 instead of 25? Not how did you engineer or hack the best performances? Like, it feels like there's a different spiritual path.
Well, it's not even only what do you know about yourself, it's what do you know about fighting, like in general.
In a way, but yourself in fighting, like I don't know.
Well, okay, let's take, for example, Nan, who's at the fight, who is at the gym, the Thai Tom.
Well, explain.
At the gym.
Explain who.
So there's this Thai woman who trains at my gym. She's not part of Patron. She has her own trainer, and they use the space. And then she stays and does clinching, sparring, her own bag work, all this type of stuff. She loves Muay Thai. She's level-wise a beginner. She has maybe like 6 or 7 fights, something like this.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
she fucking loves it. I can't believe how much that girl loves it.
She loves it so much, and she very much strongly identifies with being a fighter, and like, oh, she works very hard. Like, she's very dedicated and like serious.
A little overweight. Round.
Yeah, so she and I have only recently started sparring together, and I'm 5'1". I say 5'2", which is not true. I'm 5'1", and that's like on a good day. I'm so small, and she's the first person I've ever sparred with who makes me feel long. She's not a lot shorter than me, but she's just a short-limbed, like, compact shape. But, so the reason we're talking about her is that recently she had 2 fights back-to-back. They were like 2 days apart. Krunu booked one for her at JF Muay Thai, which is in Pattaya. She went and she fought a girl who had like more than 30 fights, was totally outclassed in the fight, lost, came directly back to training the next morning without her coach. He trains her once a day, so she was training herself in the morning, afternoon, sparring with me again, and then she fought the next day, so like 2 days apart, and then she won that second one. You could have those same 2 fights 6 months apart, and it would be completely different than having them 2 days apart.
Yeah.
Her coming immediately back to the gym, saying yes to another fight, getting back into training, I totally believe I've influenced that.
Oh.
And to me, it's very cool that I'm influencing a Thai woman like that, because
totally.
I know Caro's influenced by that too, and it doesn't make it less meaningful, but like another Westerner versus influencing a Thai is very different to me.
Totally.
But it's also, thank God for me being at the gym as long as I have, they totally are like,
no problem.
the women of Petrarung just do that now.
Yeah,
like,
before it would have
whatever.
been like, take a week off.
Whatever. So they're used to it, and they're like getting pads.
I want to get to, and this is not like an argument against people who want to take more classic fight path, career-defining ways of doing things. One of the reasons why you can, there are a lot of things that make you very special in this, in that. It used to be that your size was like, oh my God, you're so small, how can you ever find an opponent? In America, you couldn't even find an opponent.
Too small to fight.
Too small to fight. In Thailand, it became a huge advantage because everyone, literally everyone, can be a possible opponent. A 60-kilo girl can be an opponent. Like, you had to grow into it, but it created this weird, like, advantage. Like, if you're willing to take weight disadvantages, huge weight disadvantage. Learn a style like clinch fighting, which allows you to take on bigger opponents. You have the opportunity to fight that somebody else that just as large-bodied wouldn't have. So there's that blessing.
The benefit
right?
to being the smaller one is that you get to say yes or no to the fight.
Yes.
If you're bigger and there's a smaller opponent, you don't get to be like, you have to take it. Like, it's the smaller one gets to say yes.
And then there's the privilege of being in the motherland of Muay Thai, which is that there's fights everywhere.
Yep.
So other people don't really have this opportunity. I know that in the U.S. they've, in amateur pursuits, they're trying to get fight rates way up, and they've really successfully done that in the United States. And I know that Europeans fight in their kickboxing traditional ways much more frequently than others, but in Thailand there's nothing like it. the opportunity. Like fights do grow on trees. So, okay, we just want to say that there is a certain kind of context for the opportunity. But I'd like to maybe strip away or think about what is that difference between fighting 2 days apart or 6 months apart, the relatively the same opponents. Like, what do you learn or feel or experience with that? Like what's that? There's a freshness to it. Like when you fight, say you had a bad performance or you realized some flaws or something, and then you're back in the ring like 2 or 3 days later, there's something that feels really real and good about that.
I don't know how to... It's not simple because there's a lot of things that go into what that feels like or what that means. Like, part of it is that you can just let go whatever happened the last time. And it can even go, I don't think it's really gone in that direction for me before. I tend to do really well when I fight back to back.
Yeah, you do
I
fight
don't
well.
think I've won and then lost very much.
Yeah.
But even if you do win and then lose, the loss is not that bad because you still have the win right behind it. And it's like, you can't win them all kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you lose and then you win, you're like, I'm not a fucking loser.
Totally.
That girl had way more experience than me, was bigger than me, I didn't fight well that day, whatever the thing is. It's like, I think it's similar to when you're really tired or strained or whatever in training and you want to quit and you don't, and you realize that you recover like within a minute. And if you had quit and recovered within a minute and had to sit in that quitting, it just is so awful. I think that you think something about yourself because you make things more universal than they are.
Okay,
so,
after a fight.
Yeah, so you like to say you're never as good as you look when you win and you're never as bad as you look when you lose.
Yeah.
Like you're always in between those two things.
Yeah.
And when you have them back to back, even if you win twice, even if you lose twice, there's differences in there. Like, I get upset when I lost the exact same way that I did 4 months ago, but I've had 6 fights in between.
Yeah.
If I hadn't, and I lost the exact same way as I did 4 months ago, you're like, well, I just suck.
You had a really bad experience of that back in America when you had a 6-fight, I think it was a 6-fight losing streak.
Yeah, it took about a year, I think.
I think it was over a year.
Yeah.
And it was difficult because you never knew if there was going to be another fight. And it really entrenched a negative kind of thing, which maybe is what that losing streak was, the fucking best thing ever. Because when you got into Thailand, you're like, fight, I'm going to fight. And we made a commitment that every fight is fucking precious. And it's only our fear when we decide to take a fight or not. Our only fear is, if we take this fight, could this slam the door on things?
Right.
Like, we don't want to take a fight that will cut off 5 more fights or 10 more fights. And that was actually one of the great things about Chiang Mai, which was when we were booking with Cobb, and we're still trying to wake that up a little bit, is like, we never even asked who you were fighting. Like, we didn't care who you were fighting because we knew he was just going to make fights. And we could just stop even thinking about opponents. We'd eventually ask him, well, who am I fighting this time? Just so that we know that it's confirmed. Because when they give you an actual name, it's a confirmed fight. But it was more like, it felt very nice to be like, we don't even ask.
There were a bunch of times that we would walk into the stadium and look at the program and be like, oh, that's who I'm fighting. Like, we had no idea.
Totally. So, I don't know, this is also part of my own philosophy about thinking about the path of things, is I talk to Sylvie about like the stone in the river. And I'm like, you put the stone in the river and it will over time be shaped to look like the other stones in the river. Like, you look at the other stones in the river and you're like, well, that's what the river does to stones, right? And so when you think about opportunities, I think to myself, well, look at the stones that you're joining. So if you're joining a fight promotion, what do all the other fighters, what happens to them? What if you're joining a Muay Thai camp, what happens to other stones that get put in that river? So I'm always thinking to myself, like, I don't know, what I came in touch with in this month with the one fight, I'm like, I don't like the shape of the stones
in this river.
The one fight a month river. Like, there's something about exposing yourself to the fighting process 2 or 3 times a month that starts shaping you in a healthy way and teaching you things about Muay Thai and about fighting that you can't learn any other way. Like, you could maybe learn important things some other way, but not those things. Are you on with that, or?
I agree, and it also depends on the shape of my river, or like the current of my river, the width of it, the speed of the flow, like all of those things have shaped what I am.
Right.
People are going to be in other rivers. Like, people are going to have very different shapes because of where they are, what their opportunities are. You mentioned people with pretty high fight rates. They're all in Chiang Mai. Like,
yeah.
Go to Chiang Mai.
Yeah, well, that's where the fights are.
But it's not a, like, you have to have the same fight rate as Sylvie, or you have to fight a lot, otherwise you don't know anything about yourself or about fighting. You're just not going to look like that rock. Like, you're in a different river.
Yeah, and it could be quite good, but I guess what we're saying is we're talking about this because honestly, nobody has gone this far down this path as you have. Like, literally no one. So we're talking from out on the frontier. Like, this is what we're discovering and encouraging the experience for others. You can fight a lot. I don't think a single person has even fought a single year like your average years. But you could do that for a year and just see what that feels like. Like, I don't know. It's hard to do because there's a lot of political things to setting up fights, and Sylvie's been very fortunate to not get trapped into political situations that shape opportunities. Like, maybe one day we'll write a book about that. You know?
Don't say that now, because now people are going to ask for it. And
let them ask for it. It either comes or it doesn't. Okay, I think that was pretty good. Is there anything else to add to that? I mean, this is one of the things I cherish about what you're doing. Wait, what's going on? Stay to the right. It's such a beautiful thing. It's like, oh, you love horses? Ride a lot of horses. Like,
stay left.
Stay left? Okay.
I guess the thing that I would add or clarify,
okay,
is that people mean well. People's intentions are so good. And I don't misunderstand that at all.
Yeah.
But if you tell me, maybe you should take a break, maybe you should slow down, you've already done all this, maybe it's time to whatever, you're not talking about the shape of rock I am, and you're not talking about my river. Like, you're talking about that thing over there.
This other thing.
And it's like, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your intention. I hate your fucking words.
Yeah.
Intention good, words bad.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And so the reason we're mentioning that is that I want to be shaped by the speed and depth and intensity of the river that I've been in for 7 years.
And for 10 more years, maybe, if we can engineer it, if we can create the opportunities. And we're not saying this necessarily will produce the, like, great result.
Who knows?
We don't even know. But what's amazing is you've grown a lot and you're learning a fucking lot. And And I'm trusting, my own personal philosophy is like, the Death Star is not yet fully functional, but it will be. That this entire process of exposure to the legendary techniques of the Golden Age and documenting that shit, and then just keep fighting. And you can build bad habits fighting people much bigger than you. You can get distorted. There's all kinds of things that can happen that aren't maybe positive. But the idea is, let the river shape the stone. Let's see, after 17 years, what that fucking stone looks like. Like, that's how I'm at.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's also one of those things where you don't know, like, I've read this, like, meme in Thai recently that I really liked that was about how you don't know until the end of the movie whether that character was good or bad. Like, people can be kind of in the middle, and DC characters in particular tend to be a little bit ambiguous sometimes, like scientists. Like, is he good or bad? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and you don't know until... Yeah, rolling.
Next topic. Every Muay Thai Bones, we try to do something technical, like some technique. Oh, let me adjust the cool air so my little Sylvie doesn't freeze.
I'm dying.
Okay, so this Muay Thai Bones, we're going to talk about something that I got totally obsessed with. Sylvie a little less obsessed, right? Like enduring
I actually
Kevin's,
do it though, so.
Yeah, exactly. But it's Kevin's like total obsession. So I might sound more excited about this, but Sylvie's excited in her own way, right?
I'm quietly excited about
Quietly
it.
excited. Can you lead on this a little bit?
No, you lead on it.
Baby.
You have to introduce it because I don't know what aspect you want to...
I want to talk about all aspects. This is Muay Thai Bones. We just need an inroad and then we'll like shoot off. You want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay. This is a huge thing. It doesn't affect every single fighter, but it probably affects a lot of fighters. A lot of people are good with their hands on the pads or on the bag. They either have combinations that they've worked on or memorized, or they're instinctive with their hands. They react well to pad holding. They look like they can throw. They have power, balance, and whatnot. When they fight, they don't throw their hands. And it's like, what the fuck? You look so good, you have all these skills, but not accessible in actual fights. And a big mystery, because Sylvie's got beautiful hands, huge natural power for her size, like she punches way above her weight, doesn't throw in fights. Been a big mystery, lots of ties, blah, 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 blah. Something started clicking for me when you trained with Sagat, who was correcting her on her, who was a very powerful puncher, who was correcting her on her hand position in guard. And then again, when she trained with Samson, Hassan, two legends, big punchers, skilled in Western boxing. Both of them had Western boxing careers. And I'm like, both of them taught that it's really important that your punches come. Oh, and also the other one was Nung.
Yeah.
Napapong.
Mm-hmm.
WBC champion.
All three of these people are in the Muay Thai library.
All in the
you can see all
library.
these sessions.
Yeah. All of them talked about the punch originating from either, with Sagat it was the saluting position, the brow. With Napapon it was from the ear. With Samson there was some kind of variation of where the hand could be. But all of them had the punch coming out of the defensive guard position. Basically, where your hands are when you're defending yourself is the very beginning of your punch. It's the first, it's the trigger point of your punch. And I realized that Sylvie, but not just Sylvie. So many people, like Thais and Westerners, train their punches triggering from their shoulder. They start with their hands in guard, then they lower their punch, and they punch out of their shoulder slot. And I'm like, this is just an introduction of how I came upon the realization. If you're somebody who's trying to fight in the pocket, or you're a forward fighting fighter, an aggressive fighter, like Sylvie is constantly pushing forward, her hands are always in a defensive position. She's defending herself from strikes because she's in striking range. And they're not in the position from which all her triggers are trained. Like on the pads and on the bag, everything is shoulder height. So the trigger of her punches is never pulled. Like it never happens. You're basically have two positions. One is an offensive position, one's a defensive position. And this is I think, a huge, unconscious, unfortunate pattern that gets trained into a lot of people.
Right. And so you basically have you're like bifurcated, where you're like, I feel safe like this, and I feel like I can hurt you like this. And you should not be moving so much between the two, because then when you're like this, you're like, I can't hit you. And then when you're like this, you're getting hit, and so you can't hit anybody. And so the reason this is a technique section,
yes,
is that you then need to marry the trigger to where you feel protected.
Yes. It's super important. And this is the other piece of this, is that if you're looking to throw your hands, but you have to keep your hands where you're not protected, you will unconsciously position yourself further away from your target. So you will stand farther away, and then you will say to yourself, I'm too far to punch.
Yeah.
So this is the additional drawback, is like when you're in guard, when your hands are in defensive position, you're like, my trigger to throw is not activated. When they're down, you instinctively move out of the pocket to be safe, and now you're like, my visual trigger to throw is not being activated.
Yeah.
Because I can see I'm too far. I have to jump across, basically.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I'm kind of obsessed by this because now I've been starting looking at like Thai boys training and fighters, golden age fighters fighting, and I'm like, who is throwing from guard and who is not? I don't know, it's a very big thing. So maybe you can talk about, like, one, do you agree like this is a pretty good diagnostic of what's going on?
Yeah, totally. Well, as someone who actually does this shit, it drives me crazy. We were talking about how I'm now doing pads with Cruden more. Cruden's not used to holding pads for me, so I'm like new, and he's discovering things about me, which is always a little like honeymoon period or whatever.
Yeah.
But so he's like, your right kick and your right cross are so strong, you should just throw those all the time. And I laugh and I'm like, I don't kick or punch. Awesome that both of them are super strong, but I don't kick or punch because I never stand close enough in my fights.
Or if you're standing so close, you're in such defensive guard.
Yeah, I rush through that range.
Yeah.
But so there's a saying that what you practice is how you fight, or the way you practice is how you fight, or any of these things. Those are feelings. Those are like body positions. So totally, if someone is not trying to stay away from me or trying to keep me off of them, my right kick and my right punch are really strong. Those are not the conditions in which I fight. I fight in conditions where people are trying to stay away from me and trying to keep me off of them.
Yeah.
So I have to create that in my training in order to make my kick and my punch come out in those conditions, because I will never fight in the conditions where someone is waiting for me to kick and punch them. It's like,
which
not
is so
how it
crazy
works.
because it means you've trained for 7 years on the pads, more or less, a series of triggers that will not be triggered in a fight. So you have a great body of personal experience and knowledge and skill built up, but it is inaccessible in the positions you find yourself
but
in fights.
This is not unique to me. This is
not at all.
everybody.
Yeah, there's so many. When you get an eye for this, you'll be like fucking shocked.
It was actually Chicken Man, crew guy, he's in the Muay Thai library, who first completely clearly stated that one of the fighters at our gym, who we've just talked about, Bank or Tong Chai, he does not fight the way he trains, because when he trains, he's relaxed and he keeps his hands here and he can punch all day.
From the shoulder slot I'm talking about.
Beautiful, strong punches on the pads.
Explosive.
And actually in sparring pretty good. He'll like take some and then come out. But he also has two positions where it's defense or striking, and he can't go between the two.
Yeah.
And so he's like, in fights, he's afraid of being knocked out or hurt, and so he keeps his guard like this, but he never punches
Very
out of
high.
it because he doesn't train with his guard like this.
For people listening, it's a very high guard, like hands
high
up on the brow.
High versus low. So it totally revealed to me why I feel so different when if I'm sparring or something. I'm sparring and I'm like either in defense or offense, and it's like whack-a-mole where it's you're like covered and then you have to change your position in order to start firing out. And it's just inefficient, it's mentally draining, it's mentally cumbersome.
You mean,
it's like
switching from offense to defense kind of thing?
And I think that the like purest form of how to train this is Yod Kun Pan's elbow sparring, because you're only throwing elbows and you're hitting guard and having your guard hit, and you are training the mental triggers of, if you're close enough to be elbowing me, you're definitely close enough for me to be elbowing you. And you feel those rhythms and holes. So it doesn't have to all be elbow sparring. You should do that same thing with punching, with kicking, with knees, whatever, which is like, I feel your rhythm, I feel getting hit. There's too much separation between the safety or comfort of your pad man and you. And they hit you back. Like, my pad man hit me back. Pinu hits me back a lot.
Totally.
But I trust Pinu. So it's like,
but also
I'm not scared the way I am against
they hit you
opponent.
back, and when they throw that, you raise your arm into guard, like you go into defense, which is not the same as your defensive guard position is your offensive trigger. It's a really big deal. I keep coming in my mind like those old Western shootouts where the people are behind boulders, like pew pew, like people shooting behind obstacles in a town or in a desert right? If you had to stand up out away from the boulder in order to fire your gun, instead of hiding behind the boulder and shooting with very little exposed, you would never want to fire a shot.
I still have all my bullets. That's weird.
Right? 100%. It's the same thing, that if you have to drop your hands in order to throw smooth, aggressive strikes, your brain, there's different kinds of people, different kinds of ways of going around this. But generally, if you have to expose your head in order to attack, you're instinctively not going to do it in various ways.
Yeah, there's a guy who was just at our gym who is very, very unable to do the like more relaxed sparring. People say that Thai sparring is very light, kind of like it's not the way that people in the West think it is, but he just could not take his power down. Like he could not go light,
he's
basically.
Very
and he's
explosive,
he's
powerful.
big,
Yeah.
so it's not, you cannot be like, okay, that's fine, just keep going. Like he actually had to be stopped a few times, and he was talking to Kevin, and he said that if he stops, he gets knocked out
in fights. Yeah.
And what this reveals, or what Kevin and I talked about after this, is that just means you have no defense. Like, if your defense is constant like
throwing bombs,
machine gun
throwing bombs.
shooting.
Yeah.
Like, this is your defense. Work on your defense. But that means that your like offense, defense do not work together. It's
But to me, they shouldn't even work together. They should be the same thing, especially for someone who's a Muay Thai fighter like you, where you're in the pocket so much. You're like in the hitting zone so much. You're going to take max defense. You're not even going to be defending yourself like this at the jaw. You're going to be defending yourself high because of elbows and head kicks. Like, you are going to have a max defense, max protect type defense very frequently. That hand position has to be the beginning position of a strike. And to me, Sagat was the one who really drove it home, where he like basically made the hand position the beginning of a strike, the salute. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, you're saluting and then you just put your arm straight out in a punch. Like, it's literally reaching forward from the salute position. And it's also how you could be the initial position for a clinch grab also. Mm. So someone wouldn't even know if you're throwing a punch or making a clinch grab. And I'm like, the closer you can get those positions, the more willing you will be to throw a punch. And I'm like, I think to myself also, we realized this, you were massaging Kiro last night and your nose started bleeding. And it was like, I don't know, it was like an hour after your fight. And it was just because your head was like hanging low. Like, you were bent over and suddenly your nose started dripping a little bit. And I'm like, oh my God, that is maybe the first bloodied nose you've had ever in a fight in over 250 fights. I'm like, one of the unsung qualities you have is that you're a really good defensive fighter. Not in some kind of slick, you can't touch me way, but you protect up really well. Like, you have been knocked to the canvas one time in over 1,000 rounds.
Well, this is the
It's not just that you're fucking tough. You're small, like.
That's the thing that drives me crazy is people who like to point out all my scars and they're like, oh, you're stupid. You've been cut so many times. And I'm like, look at how many times I've fought and how big the people are and how many elbows they've thrown at me that haven't landed.
Yeah,
I'm quite good defensively.
But I'm saying everyone is trying to hit you in the center of the face. Like, the nose is the center of the face. Early on, you suffered a broken nose. Was that twice or once?
In a fight?
In a fight. Once. The fact that the center of your face in 250 plus fights, you've only bled from it an hour after your last fight, like, your ability to defend yourself from frontal attack is way up there, especially because you fight like much bigger opponents. And I'm like, okay, you've got your defensive instincts really good. Your citadel.
Yeah, but I have to be able to strike back out of it.
Right out of it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me how much offense you've trained from a non-defensive position. And I don't think it's wasted. All that is there, but you have to like run new grooves that connect up a new trigger point to those already learned skills.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it'd be like if you had a shotgun and you could only cock it in the like Arnie style, like vertically like this. And so you had to like put it on your shoulder to shoot, and then you had to take it down to do the like Arnie cock, and then you had to put it back up rather than being able to like.
Yeah, totally. And then, I don't know, I think to myself, like, for people listening, I think people who haven't fought as much as you, which is basically everyone, but I think you can build up some really heavy head cases about yourself where you're throwing really nice on the pads, and then you go and fight, and you don't throw whatever it is, your right hand or whatever you're supposedly blessed with or good at, and your coach is like, why don't you throw it? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And all you can do is feel really shitty about yourself. You're like, I don't know. I feel stressed. I feel afraid.
Here's the thing, and I'm sorry, Caro, for talking about you so much.
Because we love you so much.
put all your shit out there for everyone. Caro doesn't have a lot of fights yet, but I was cornering for her, and the other people who were cornering for her who don't know her were getting very upset that she was not bringing her leg back.
This is not the last fight.
No.
Okay.
She was not bringing her leg back before knees, and the reason they were so upset is because she throws so many knees, and if you just bring the leg back in order to put power in it, it would be a knockout. They're like, just do this thing and you will kill this girl. I can rewind to my own career in Chiang Mai, throwing little like rabbit knees in clinch, and Den getting so pissed off, and Den being like, Sylvie, stop doing these things, just throw the knee. But
throw a proper knee.
so they're all yelling
saying.
at her, they're all like getting all like, just do this thing, blah blah blah. And I said to Caro, because I have more experience in this, I'm like, Caro, it's the same as pad work. I'm like, when you're doing pads and you grab someone, you bring your leg back and you knee. And she totally had this moment of recognition. She was like, oh, like giving her an example of when her body has felt herself doing what she's supposed to be doing. The thing is, you can't even collapse these like techniques or skills to moments in which you actually do that. So if there are times that I do punch out of my guard, if you were like, Sylvie, think of when you're, I don't know, punching Champ back because you've like waited for his set to be done or something. I'm like, yes, I have punched out of guard before. That one time. Like, that's the one time I know what that feels like.
You start with one.
And so you find the feeling of when you're comfortable striking out of it, and then you recreate that into your training so that you do that all the time.
Yeah.
You don't just conceptually like make it up.
Yeah, but you need to do it all the time, and I also think you need to do it exaggeratedly. You cannot inch up slowly, higher and higher and higher. You have to start too high.
Yeah.
Start your punches from too high on up.
Because they're going to come down.
And
when
watch
you're tired anyway.
watch the Sagat session. I think it's the third one where he really teaches this salute. This punching salute is just like, it also makes your punch very hard to read and see. Like, it's a very efficient line of attack. Because it's not coming wide, it comes very direct. It gives your opponent less time to react. But I'm still like caught up in this, like, the pain many people must feel of not understanding why they can punch on the pads in the bag and they won't punch in fights. And I think this is a huge fucking thing.
I sing awesome in the shower. Why can't I do it on stage?
I know, but I think people feel they end up developing like a complex of negativity around something that they do well.
100%. When Cruden was like, Sylvie, you should just right kick and right punch, I laughed and was like, I don't kick or punch. Instead of like, yeah, I should.
Yeah.
Like, I can totally do that in a fight.
And then there's another dimension of this, which is there's the story that Thais don't have good hands, which is this like
Kevin
cliche.
hates this.
What?
Kevin hates
I hate this. But I'm gonna argue against myself on this. There is a long history of Thai world champions in boxing, Western boxing. And almost all of them are converts from Muay Thai. There's people like Warapon who had great Muay Thai careers and then went on to become like WBC champions. There's people like Charchai Sasakun, who was like an average Thai fighter, Muay Thai fighter, went on to become WC world champion. Like, fucking Thais have hands. But this is the interesting thing. I think that in the golden age, the relationship between Western boxing and Muay Thai in camps was much closer. That the cross-pollination between the two arts made it so great Muay Thai fighters knew how to punch out of guard. Yeah, as Muay Thai fighters. Like, they had this capacity. And I think that as time passed, and there were certain gyms that had much closer relationship to Western boxing, like Pet Yin Di,
Sit Yo Tong.
Sit Yo Tong, good. Sasaprapa apparently had a lot of boxers. Their Muay probably was much closer, like a more robust synthesis of Western boxing and Muay Thai. And there are probably other gyms which didn't have as much boxing influence. I think this is actually, and then as the decades have passed, many gyms have lost the lessons of Western boxing. And this is one of them. I think that many Thais don't have great hands because of this. Like, they might have great hands on the pads, but they're punching from a low slot. They don't know how to punch from their guard, like from the actual hand position of maximum defense straight into offense, maximum defense straight into offense. In boxing, there's a few things, which is boxers can punch from a lower hand position with slipping and head movement, which doesn't really work that well in Muay Thai because of elbows and knees. So there are low slung boxing positions, but I think there's something for the Muay Thai fighter, especially if you're a forward fighter, you gotta learn that arm slot, the boxing arm slot of being able to punch from your guard. And I think a lot of Muay Thai fighters today, Thais, I'm talking about Thais, don't have this because the pedagogy diverges. It's not a constant state of knowledge.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you agree?
I don't know. I haven't looked at it that closely, but it makes sense. Like, it seems reasonable. It would require, like, really looking into.
Well, start watching Muay Thai fighters and look, where do their punches originate?
Yeah.
If they originate here at the shoulder, these are probably not prodigious punchers. Like, they don't punch with power and precision.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe another aspect of this is that when you have a low slung punching slot, I have a feeling your elbow has a chance of floating up there. You have the Thai punch where the elbow starts chicken winging, which means you might generate a lot of power, but you lose accuracy also.
Yeah.
And accuracy, people tell us, like legends tell us, is way more important than power.
Totally.
Okay.
Like, way
more important than power. If you can put the punch where it should be, you can be 70% or 60% power and still knock somebody out. Yeah. Okay, that was a pretty good one. Rolling. So, if you've been with us this whole time, this is pretty awesome. Started like in the middle of the day. It was like 2 o'clock, driving out of Khao, and now we're just like, the sun is going down. If you're listening on audio, the headlights and taillights are all out. We've got like 3 more hours to our destination. We're not going to go for 3 more hours on the podcast. This is our last segment. But I fucking love that we can have these conversations and they can then be beamed all over the world and just talk at length as we blabber away about the things that we think are important. Maybe you find some of them important too. I'm pretty excited by how the podcast has gone so far.
It's been a good one.
So, this last thing is, we're not even sure how we're going to approach it. If you don't follow everything on Patreon or Sylvie's social media, the most fucking amazing thing happened in the world, which is possibly the greatest Muay Thai fight ever, under some standards, which was between the fighter that most people call the GOAT, the greatest fighter ever, Samart Karun, and Dieselnoi Chor Tanasukarn, who I think was the greatest greatest Muay Thai fighter ever. So,
GOAT versus GOAT.
GOAT versus GOAT. This is probably, it's safe to say, the greatest female fighter ever versus the greatest Muay Thai fighter ever.
You said femur, not female. It sounded like female again.
Oh my God, I'm really heading for that. Although Dieselnoi did tell us that Samart
Samart hits
punches
like a
like a girl. In his jocular, hilarious way that he has a way of talking. They're very good friends, by the way. This was a fight that happened in 1982, and it was lost to history. It was like, we have connections to people that are in the collector world to some degree. We had no knowledge that the video itself ever was even saved, that it even existed in any way. And I'm like, this was a fight that was just mythic in proportion, that we thought the only persons who had ever seen it were the people who were in the stadium.
Yeah.
And to add to the poignancy of this fight, which has now been surfaced, it was found by a patron of Sylvie's. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to like have our network of people having brought this fight forward. Dieselnoi, who beat everyone and ran out of opponents at the fucking like golden age peak. He had to retire when he was 24 years old. We'd heard how amazing he was. Sylvie's trained with him and she's filmed with him for the Muay Thai library. But there existed no full fight footage of his actual fighting style.
When he was at his prime.
Versus an elite talent, like a Thai talent. There were a couple minutes, maybe a minute or so of him versus Nong Khai, who was a fighter of the year, and a couple seconds of him versus Sagat. But there was no fight to watch. There was just him doing pad work. And I'm like, in this fight, suddenly there is the full, it's like you only saw dinosaurs in reconstructed museums with bones or with modeling, and then suddenly there's a living dinosaur.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's how they move. That's why they're shaped that way. That's what Dieselnoi means when he's like, keep doing this one thing or another, when he's explaining a style. To actually see the full fucking thing unveiled against one of the great fighters ever is so beautiful. And we're not gonna like break down what happened in the fight. We did a whole watch with me. As soon as we heard about the fight, we
left training.
We left training. We're like, we don't even know that this is a real thing. It looks like the real thing. We ran home, got the footage, and just did a watch with me and talked about our initial reactions about this thing. So maybe before we go a little bit into the network idea, what does it mean to you to know that this fight is out there for people to see? Or go a different direction if you want, baby. You can just throw out ideas. You're very quiet.
The thing is, we have asked Dieselnoi if there's any footage of him anywhere, because fucking of course you want to see it.
Yeah.
And Dieselnoi, in a very quick and sad response, is always like, no, there's nothing. It's like everything was lost in the fire kind of response. Like, it's all gone. There's nothing.
Yeah.
And we're like, there must be something in the like vaults of some Channel 5, like somewhere.
Yeah.
And even the possibility of that, he's like, there are people who won't let that out. Like, he honestly feels like a kind of hurt, like people won't let him be seen kind of thing.
It's like he's been erased from fucking history.
And he's
by accident or on purpose and decision, who knows?
Yeah, and he's just like the pillar of Muay Thai from the Golden Age. There's so little of Dieselnoi in video that he has it all saved on his phone to like pull up to show you, and it's just these little pieces, it's just these little scraps.
Yeah.
And so this fight, this like holy grail fight, that honestly, the way it was found, if we have not been talking about Dieselnoi for years, and in the community of patron and the world being like, we love Dieselnoi.
Yeah.
And it's not, we did not make people love Dieselnoi, but
We put people in touch with
his
him.
name up and bringing community around him. A few years ago, he was having serious heart problems. He's already had heart surgery, and it was looking like he was going to need another heart surgery. And we tapped into the community, and people were like, let's help Dieselnoi.
Yeah.
People around the world love him.
Yeah.
To have that same community find this holy grail out of nowhere and be like, this is here.
Yeah.
And now people can see it. And not only can people see it, Dieselnoi can see it.
Yeah.
And Dieselnoi has a full, like, his fighter of the year fight against Samart that you can now see. That came out of the community of patron that loves Muay Thai, that loves the history of Muay Thai, that loves preserving Muay Thai.
Look what fucking got preserved. Now, I don't know if it would, what would have happened to it if none of this had happened, if it would have been found and posted in some other way. It's possible, but it's also possible not. And this is one of the after effects of what talking about and celebrating these people brings. It's just these accidental connections of people who also have passion for Muay Thai and the history of it. And I'm like, God, if you ever met Dieselnoi, you'd be like, this is the man you would do stuff for. Like, this is fucking unreal. And then to watch the fucking fight, you know, people a lot of times like diminish Dieselnoi because they only had ever seen him do pad work. Like, his entire career was assessed by, oh, he was really tall, okay, and man, he was fierce on the pads. Like, that's all you could fucking see. And he was fucking, in that video, he's fucking unreal on the pads. And you're like, well, that's what he did. He was just tall and he fucking threshed people. And then to see him against the most artful fighter ever be just fucking full of his own technique, his own adjustments to the adjustment, his own thinking style, like, is really fucking beautiful. It's like putting it's like, I know you love this one. Oh, dinosaurs did have feathers. But seriously, it's like all the details of the living fighter. Now the real thing is there. Like, the truth of the matter is that the reason why we celebrate the fighters we do is those are the fighters that made it to YouTube.
Right.
Like, it was like there was a mass extinction of dinosaurs. I'm going to stay with this analogy. And only the bones of certain species survived. So, whatever bones we put in our museums, those are the famous dinosaurs of the dinosaur age.
Okay, to stick with your
You're
analogy,
gonna go with
this
this
is actually a true thing because I've actually watched some things on paleontology recently.
Nice, baby.
When bones were being collected and gathered and everyone wanted to like name everything after themselves, people just wanted the biggest bones. So the biggest dinosaurs got named and categorized, and the smallest bones were thrown out because people wanted the bigger, better ones. So they're like, where are the fucking baby dinosaurs? Where are the small dinosaurs? And so the small ones, it's as though they didn't exist. It's as though all dinosaurs were these giant, massive things because those are the ones that people kept.
Right.
It's like, you ask people who the greatest Muay Thai fighters are, they'll name the ones they know.
And
like,
the ones they know were
who's seen Wanchanoi? Like,
the ones that were put in the museum, and the museum was Wansung Chai Promotions.
Yes.
So, and also the ones that fought Westerners, because Westerners were mostly interested in those that fought them.
Right. Or their titles will be in English on YouTube.
True.
Searchable.
Right. And then so many others, like the judgments you pass on that fighter is from the 2 or 3 fights that even survived and made YouTube. But let's say they lost to somebody on YouTube, but they fought them 7 other times that you've never seen. But you make these deep assessments of somebody based on hearsay, some very rough sketch of their career, and just little tiny pieces of what has survived, what made the museum. And this is what's fucking unreal about this fight, is you put this fight in the museum. This fight now is in the museum, not just now, fucking 20 years from now, 30 years from now.
There's also this incredible thing that there are people who, like Krunu, who was young when Dieselnoi was in his prime. He had heard about Dieselnoi. People talked about him as this like just unbelievable fighter who nobody had ever seen. Pinu had never seen him. He saw photos of him in a magazine looking amazing, but like had never seen footage of him.
He wasn't on TV a lot.
Wasn't on TV, all these things, and he is incredible. And so it's like, you don't know whether it's like the writers made the man or whatever the thing is, but because there was no record, there's no video, there's no whatever, this is how amazing Dieselnoi is. People lie about having fought him.
Yeah.
Famous people lie about having beat him who didn't, or how much damage they did to him who fucking didn't. Yeah. People who he's never met before in his life go to America, nobody knows about Dieselnoi, and they're like, I beat Dieselnoi. Yeah. Then they meet in the gym, and it's like, like totally not true.
That's a true story.
That's a true story.
Unfortunately.
So,
yeah.
So you have this like, I beat Tyson or whatever the thing is, and then you actually get video, and he's as amazing, if not more than what you thought.
Yeah.
This was my favorite. Okay. I went to the gym after we did the watch with me, and Shay, who loves Dieselnoi and has done privates with him, and he's very big. Shay's very tall, like tries to take the things that Dieselnoi has taught him about like how to do strategy and things like this. He was like, I could not believe how I could see Dieselnoi in Dieselnoi when he was young. Like it all makes sense. Like all the things that he's saying, I see it.
This is the most, what to me, one of the most incredible things about the thing is that you filmed. We're about to put up a 4th Dieselnoi session in the Muay Thai library. We've been trying to document. It's hard to document because he's very unusual. He's very insistent in the things he has to say. Yeah. And we're about to put the 4th one up. And yeah, it's pretty fucking cool. Like your Muay Thai library is a kind of museum. It's like we've created a secondary museum as opposed to the YouTube fight museum, which was like, if the fight made YouTube, history will think about you. Well, you know what? We've created a different museum, which is the Muay Thai Library Museum, which is like people teaching their actual techniques. We had that done. You watch those 4 sessions, then go watch the fight, because then you see what he's full-fledged talking about. Yeah. Like, you see how it's done, what he's teaching, how it's done. Oh my God, it just like fills in so much gaps. I mean, of course, it would be great to have 5 fights from him. Yeah. But this fight, oh man, it was really, and you know what? It also puts we know that as a catchweight fight, we know that Dieselnoi cut a lot of weight and cut 19 pounds in a few weeks and was weakened by it. But he had a weight advantage in that ring and obviously a stature advantage against Samart. But it also soberizes the great legend of Samart to actually see him frustrated and struggle against Muay Khao, like unreal Muay Khao fighting. Because Samart, when we talk to Samart, he's like, I never lost to Muay Khao.
And you're like, you kind of lost to the greatest Muay Khao.
Yeah, but he doesn't even count that because of the catch weight thing. Yeah. In his mind, he never lost to Muay Khao. Yeah. But you get to actually see him struggle against Muay Khao. Yeah. And it's an unusual fight, but that adds to like the detail of what Muay Fimuras do. Yes. And what Samart is and was. Like, that's a blessing too. Like, it's awesome to be like untouchable, highlight real heroism. Like, I'll never forget Samart do his like little like pull back sniff of that reverse kick by that French guy. He's like,
Oh, we're doing spinning shit now.
Spinning shit.
Yeah.
Like, highlights are a beautiful way to encapsulate a fighter, and there's some fucking unreal Samart highlights. But it's also beautiful to have this, like, down-to-earth, like, reality fight, and to see, like, some people watch this fight and they're like, wow, Samart fought like a lion, because they can see what he was fighting against.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's a very beautiful thing to me also. Like,
Well, and you pointed out in our watch with me, Samart could easily have refused that fight.
Oh my God.
And had no fucking
very,
blemish at all.
yeah.
But for him to take that fight
Yeah.
and lose the way that he did and still be Samart, like he's a fucking amazing fighter.
He went on to fucking win Fighter of the Year
the next year. Yeah.
the next year, I think it was. Yeah. And then again, I think he won it 2 more times.
No. He had it the year before.
He had it in 81, he won it in 83, and then he came back and I think he won it in 86.
Okay, so
He came back from boxing.
2 more times, not 3 more times.
Oh, sorry, I meant 2 more times. He won it 3 times
Yeah.
altogether. I don't know. There's another small dimension to this, which is we know for sure that a collector or collectors are hoarding video,
Like
fight video.
this. Stuff like this.
And we know, and we've got confirmation from other patrons, we have seen Dieselnoi versus Sagat,
The second
the
one.
second fight, which happened about 2 years after this Samart fight. We saw it only because we were asked, don't show this to anyone. Basically had to promise not to show it to anyone. The history of these men is being held by collectors, and I know these guys have super passion, like they're fucking collectors. They have super passion for what they're saving, but I'm like, this is their legacy. Like, eventually we have to have these videos released. I don't honestly understand the collector's mind. The collector's mind is a special mind. Like, they have their own internal logic, right?
Yeah. It's you buy the original Rembrandt and put it in a vault.
In a vault, I
It's
guess. I something like that. But then you let other people see it. Like, we've been allowed to see this Sagat versus Dieselnoi fight.
And out of respect for that
Totally.
community, we have not shared
Totally.
it.
And other people have said they've seen it. So it's fucking out there. There is another full Dieselnoi fight out, and there might be others.
Yeah.
Like, let us eventually try to bring to the public more of the history of Dieselnoi, or I don't know, whomever else. Like,
Yeah.
please, like,
It's
they
their legacy.
need to be they need to be celebrated. And these men, in many ways, their fights are all they have in a certain regard. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna sit down with Dieselnoi and do a Legends Speak kind of thing. We've done one with Nam Kaboon. Nam Kaboon fought Decker late in both of their careers, and we sat down and had him watch the fight and talk about it and interview him before and after. We're going to do the same thing with this footage with Dieselnoi,
Yeah.
and that's going to be really special, because then you're going to have Dieselnoi talking personally about the experience, and that'll be special too. But let's maybe one day work to bring more of this stuff out. Like,
Yeah.
it means a lot to these guys. Like, a lot, we hashtag preserve the legacy. This is one way of, like, preserving the legacy. Put more bones in the museum. Right?
Yeah.
Put more bones in the museum.
It's heartbreaking, because these men were, to me, like, heroes, and just like, I'm gonna cry, just, they made Muay Thai what it was in the golden age. They made that, and it was confluence of promoters and gyms and other fighters and all these different things and popularity at the time. But Samson, who we just brought to the gym for 3 days, he honestly, we brought him to teach. He just wanted to clinch and spar the whole time. Like, he just wanted to like be a little gym rat. He drives a taxi. He's not a trainer. He's not a legend who like gets to be recognized all the time for the amazing things he accomplished. We have that 123 all-time greatest fighters book that almost all the people we've had sign that are like, what is this and why am I in it? Like, this is incredible.
Totally.
We got one for Samson to bring home so he can show his kids.
Totally.
Because he was just like so moved by it when he was signing it for Shay. But that's the kind of thing that like, you're like, oh, I have this thing. I want that book. I want this book that has all these legends in it. And that legend is moved by it.
Yeah.
Like, it's their legacy.
Oh, man, yeah. I remember Krongsak.
We got one for Krongsak, too.
But he was, like, so overwhelmed by even seeing himself with all of these other great
He wouldn't even
men.
sign it. He was so into, like, looking through the book. We were like, let's just take your time.
Totally. Totally. Okay, so that's the end of this Muay Thai Bones. We're in full nightfall now.
Yeah. 2.5 hours to go.
Thank you, everyone who support us, who listen to us. We actually don't even know who listens to this stuff on podcast or watches on YouTube. We don't get download data off of Patron, so we don't even know. So if you're enjoying the podcast in podcast form, in the audio form, please shoot us a message and tell us like how you're listening to it, that you're listening to it, so we can do more of it. Maybe thank you to our sponsors. Onyx MMA sponsors Sylvie as a fighter and 8 Limbs Us, and Lobo sponsors you as a fighter and 8 Limbs Us. And then the sponsors of the Muay Thai Library, which is what we're kind of talking about. We have Zesty Kicks, we have Smack Gym,
Chikara Gym,
Chikara Martial Arts. One anonymous sponsor. Is that it?
I think so.
There's 4 of us. Yeah. Hopefully we did not miss one. If you'd like to sponsor, you can check us out on Patreon and sponsor the Muay Thai Library and help make that possible. We're going to start doing a translation commitment. We're going to hire professional translators so Sylvie can interview legends and let them tell their story more in Thai, and then have it professionally translated and do more watch with me's with legends, so they can tell their story about what's happening in actual fights that are. Let the dinosaur talk about the bones in the in the museum. Well, they're these beautiful, regal men of the past. Totally. I'm starting to think of them as the last men, kind of. Okay, ready? That's it. Cue music. Very nice, baby.